And we're live. Hello, folks. Let me just tilt that a wee bit there. There we go. Hello there. I hope you're all keeping well. Anybody's out there in YouTube land, you can say hello. My name is Dr. Sloan, and welcome to my wee science fiction station. And today we're on our Dune Messiah book club. And I think we're on chapter. Let me just check. Sorry, I'm disorganized as always. And we're on what I call. What would I call this? Bear with me. Chapter 10. Pretty much. Sorry, I just get all my notes started today. Or are we actually? Here lies the top. No, we're not. Sorry, apologies. We're on chapter 11. I do apologize. We're going a wee bit further than that. There's Chani Rivka saying shalom all. Carlos Crescera saying, what's up, Doc? Hi, folks. Have you seen the Dune movie part 2 yet? I'm just wondering what you think. It's been very interesting to look at all the comments and reviews and discussions online. I've quite enjoyed it. So I'm just wondering if you have seen it. Goodness, I'm not organized. It's me says hi. Hello, folks. How you doing? It's me. I like that name. Let me see. Terribly. Had a hell of a day today. Actually, it started about 3 in the morning, and I think I've just been ridiculously dehydrated. So back on the fluids and stuff today. Plenty of them. You've got to look after those precious fluids, folks. But yeah, I've not had a good day. I just took the wife out for dinner to cheer us both up. That was very, very nice. So I hope you're having a better day than me. And I said my evening's turning out to be quite good. So they said, hi, Doc, hi, all. Chai Ruckus saying, I haven't seen it yet. No theatre in my town. You know what that's like, Chai? I used to, when I was younger, there were no cinemas in the towns that I lived in at all. I always had to travel towards Belfast, that kind of way, to go see a movie. It's me says, no, I have not seen Dune's second movie, and I will not plan to see it. I think there's a few people that are taking a bit of, if you're Dune fans, I honestly don't know if you are going to like it. I kind of went, and I'll just say this, much as I said I enjoyed the film, really it was the experience of going to the movies. I hadn't been to the movies in a long time. Our cinemas have all changed since COVID. The cinema I went to see Dune Part 1 in Belfast was awful. It was horrendous. And it was actually a new cinema. But our local cinema is much improved. So it was really just... it was just the fact that I had a nice day. I think that it was good for me. But the more and more I think about it, the more and more I dislike it, I have to say. And the more and more I listen to the cast and staff and people involved in the film, I really don't like what they've done with it at all. To be honest with you. Cynthia saying, I saw it very fun, but too many changes from Herbert's text. Yeah, if you go to see a film spectacle, look at something on the big screen and go, oh, look at this is cool. It's a different thing than, I suppose, really looking at the nature of the film from the point of view of the book, I think. But far too many changes, and some that are very jarring, and some that will have massive, massive consequences. So regardless of what you think Denis Villeneuve has done with Dune Part 1 and Part 2, those will have massive consequences for Dune Messiah, and probably even bigger consequences for children of Dune. But I have to say, just from my own point of view, I'm sure maybe a few of you heard me just chat about it there the other week, but I think it's the worst version of Dune we've seen. As much as it's the prettiest looking, I just did not think it was good at all. In terms of its faithfulness to Frank's work and Frank's intent, that's it. That's the way I look at it. But I thought they mauled the characters. And the more and more I think about it, the more and more I think about David Lynch's version and the miniseries, I consider them both better. But I kind of want to see it again to pick it apart, if you see what I mean, And for the likes of It's Me who doesn't really, maybe not going to see it, for me, I would kind of look at it in a professional manner, if that makes sense. I will watch it again, not because I want to, but because I'll do some work on it, if you see what I mean, It's Me says, Timothy Chalamet is not for this role. Very poor acting and emotion investment. I thought he was the least offensive thing in it, to be honest with you. It was Chani, even in the movie. I heard her name. Chani. There's a character called Chani, but I don't think she's Chani at all. And I think I said there's a character that's Chani's buddy. That's Shishakli, I think her name is. The actress does a better job of playing Chani, even though she's not. I think it's a strange thing. And what was up with Gurney's song? I have an opinion about Gurney's songs, as I'm sure you know. I thought, what the hell is this? It's just, I don't know. I'm a musician, guys, as you know, so it grated with me a bit. Kind of song on. I thought that the songs are quite bad in the book. Therefore, having quite a bad song in the film kind of matched the character. But it's a visual spectacle, and it's, in that sense, when you go to see a film like that, you look at it and absorb it, and I did that, and I kind of ate my popcorn and drank my juice and missed a few minutes of it, but I came out of it going, okay, well, at least I had a much better time at the movies this time, but and it was better paced and stuff, I think, but it lost so much. And then I was feeling really stupid the other week because I kept saying, did Paul and Chani have a baby? But I stepped out to go to the loo, and kind of where I came back in, I thought was the point where the Sardaukar would have attacked that siege and got Alia and killed the baby, etc. And then, of course, I realised that Jessica is still pregnant, so there's no way that Chani could have conceived and had Paul's child in that time, But yeah, Carlos, I'm kind of wanting to look at things like Gurney's song a lot closer, just to have a wee nosy, But I thought, in all honesty, and I know world audiences, people are loving it. And I'll tell you one other thing I think is kind of interesting about it is that we've seen a lot of people, YouTube commentators, criticize things, particularly Lord of the Rings and stuff like this, for messing with lore. If you see what I mean, I have my own opinions about it. But even the likes of Nerdrotic, etc., who seem to be really passionate about this kind of thing. Nobody seems bothered with the mucking with the lore of Dune, and I kind of think that's a little bit hypocritical. But to be honest with you, I don't know what you think. A couple of wee things just to let you know, folks, before we start. The wife's heading off for dinner tomorrow with a friend, so I might do a wee show tomorrow night just for a general sci-fi fantasy horror chat. But I just wanted to let you know a few wee things on my radar very quickly. Just in relation to somebody that we've talked about from the Dune movie, which is David Dastmalchian. Sorry, I just caught a trailer for his new film, and I think he's one of the actors that I have said, what a waste, what a complete and utter waste of an actor, and what a complete and utter waste of a character in Dune. David Dastmalchian has got a rather, and I'm not a big horror movie fan, but this looks brilliant. A rather good film, looks good. Check out the trailer, folks. It's called Late Night with the Devil. My understanding is it's getting a cinema release on March the 22nd, and it will be released on Shudder on April the 19th. I think there's been some celebrities have seen early showings of this film, and Stephen King has given it a super endorsement. But just watching the trailer, I thought, David Dastmalchian, this guy's a good actor. It looked like, here we go, we get to see this man act well, and he's the main part in this, I think. But I just felt really bad for him in relation to Dune, because he'd landed a great role. Just like most of the characters in Denis Villeneuve's Dune, are just wasted, pale shadows of themselves, But based on that trailer, folks, that looks amazing. I caught one other thing to do with Dune, by the way. If you want to type this in and have a look at it, I caught it on YouTube Shorts. Is that somebody that's called Dune 2 One Wheel Costume, and there's a guy, I don't know if you've seen it, he's sand riding through the cinema on a sandworm, and I just thought that was, whoever he is, it looks fantastic. It's a pity all the cinemas didn't have something like that in it instead of the silly popcorn buckets, So, and just a couple of other points then. There's a couple of other final trailers out on YouTube for some properties that might interest you. One of them in particular is the Three-Body Problem, which I'm looking forward to very much. Again, that's something that should not be adapted for the cinema. It's too big. And it looks like we're getting Fallout on TV as well. So those were all final trailers. I checked them all out today, as well as looking at a lot of Dune conversations and reviews and all sorts of things. So yeah, but that particularly that Late Night with the Devil, that looks fantastic. Really, I think we've all talked about my kind of horror. It's not slasher and all this kind of stuff. It's atmospheric, and I like those kind of horrors, but it really does look exceptionally good based on the trailer, So just a little bit of things for you to check out, folks. Let's get our book going. I think I was quite pleased to see that we've got a few light chapters ahead. Or maybe I was wrong. Got a lengthy one after this and then a couple of short ones, I think. But chapter 11, where we're at, as I always call them, chapter 11, I'll just read the epigraph to begin with. I've given this chapter the title Moonfall. Oh, sorry, folks, one other thing before we start. Just in relation to science fiction fans, I know you guys are all over the world. So I got a wee comment on one of my videos that I made about Harlan Ellison's Bloods Are Over. And it was just somebody basically saying that they can't get hold of this book anywhere. So I've done a few searches and put a wee comment on that video to the person that was looking for it. But if any of you are aware of where we could pick up a copy of that book, if any of you could leave a link on the video for that on my YouTube channel, I'd appreciate it. I've done a wee bit of research, but it seems that was The Bloods Are Over that I've got. Edited by Jason Davis from Edgware Abbey Archive Press, isn't it? Seems to be a pretty rare thing. Let me see. So it was just somebody was asking after. A lot of your science fiction fans might know particular bookshops. I had suggested maybe speaking to the editor himself. But if anybody knows where we can pick up a copy of Bloods Are Over, if you could post a link on the Bloods Are Over video, that would be really appreciated. If not, not to worry. I know it's kind of, I've looked myself. I was very surprised to find that book's ridiculously hard to get. And if you've got a copy, the prices of it are, let me see if I got mine sitting here. Unfortunately, you couldn't get a copy at the minute, but I've seen them between 120 and 180 pounds, which is quite surprising, There, here with me a second. There it is. So as I said, it was just a wee thing. I did a wee video on this discussing it. This is the book in question. This one. There is a different version of it that was made just prior to this that we discussed in the video, and there's slight changes to this one. Edgeworks Abbey Archive Edition. So it's simply, if anybody knows where we can pick up a copy of this, we've got some people asking after it, and it is excellent. It made me so happy when I saw it. Couldn't wait to get into Vic and Blood again. As I like to say, a bit of science fiction royalty. Now, there we go. So that was just a wee something that somebody had asked. I just thought it would pass on. I've done a wee bit of looking myself, but anyway, here we go. I call this one Moonfall. And I'm sure you'll probably figure out why. I think what a joy it is to be alive, and I wonder if I'll ever leap inward to the root of this flesh and know myself as once I was. The root is there. Whether any act of mine can find it, that remains tangled in the future. But all things a man can do are mine. Any act of mine may do it. And this is from the Gola Speaks, Alia's commentary. What a joy it is to be alive, and I wonder if I'll ever leap inward to the root of this flesh and know myself as once I was. The root is there. It's an interesting little, without any epigram. And, in relation to the Gola hate, perhaps, we could also probably consider it in the likes, in relation to Paul and so on. But this is a chapter where we have Paul analyzing a vision, basically. And it's interesting because we kind of get to see a wee bit into his mind here. Pardon me. And of course, this is, as much as we've been chatting about Chani in the film, a lot of this chapter is about Chani. There we go. Now, let's see. Off we go. So, let's see, as we begin. So, Paul, we're told, as he lay immersed in the screaming odor of the spice, staring inward through the oracular trance, Paul saw the moon become an elongated sphere. It rolled and twisted, hissing, the terrible hissing of a star being quenched in an infinite sea, down, 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 like a ball thrown by a child. It was gone. And I've done a wee kind of set of illustrations just to go with this. What he's saying over here, where we are. So there's our elongated sphere, down, 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 and it was gone. Pop. This moon had not set. Realization engulfed him. It was gone. No moon. The earth quaked like an animal shaking its skin, and we're told that terror swept over him. And Paul jerked upright on his pallet, eyes wide open, staring. Part of him looked outward, part inward. Outwardly, he saw the plasmel grillwork, which vented his private room, and he knew he lay beside a stone-like abyss, the stone-like abyss of his keep. Sorry, it's my handwriting. Inwardly, he continued to see the moon fall. Out. And we're told this: his grillwork of plasmel looked onto the blazing light of noon across Arrakis. Inward, there lay blackest night. A shower of sweet odours from a garden roof nibbled at his senses, but no floral perfume could roll back that fallen moon. Now, just a couple of wee things, I suppose, but this begins with the screaming odour of the spice. And he's immersed in it. And we have basically Paul having two sets of vision: his ordinary eyes, eyes wide open, as we're told. But this is the internal vision, and it seems to dominate. Inward, there lay a blackest night, a shower of sweet odours from a garden roof nibbled at his senses, but no floral perfume could roll back that fallen moon. So a real bit of a contrast there with the smells. I've just made a wee note with the floral perfume there, just to see a later note, number 8, which is the floral perfume is relating to Chani. Now, we're told Paul swung his feet to the cold surface of the floor, peered through the grillwork. He could see directly across to the gentle arc of a footbridge constructed of crystal stabilized gold and platinum. Fire jewels from far Sidon decorated the bridge. It led to the galleries of the inner city across a pool and fountain filled with water flowers. If he stood, Paul knew he could look down into petals as clean and red as fresh blood, whirling, turning there, discs of ambient colour tossed on an emerald freshet. Now, a couple of wee things there. Let's see, a freshet is, a couple of things. It can be the flood of a river due to heavy rain or melting snow. It's also a rush of fresh water flowing into the sea. That's what a freshet is. I did not know that. So there you go. That's one word, new word for me. Now, the other thing here I just thought is this bridge is interesting. I actually saw an interview with somebody quoting one of the new Dune books. I'll not say who. And the language in it mirrors my PhD. The bridge, that Dune is a bridge. And I was kind of a bit, that sounds a bit like, I don't know if I've been referenced in it or not, but sounded a wee bit dodgy to me. But in relation to the fire jewels from far Sidon, in relation to that, as usual, we look at place names and stuff like that. Now, I thought that was Chalcedon. In relation to that, it would kind of make sense. Chalcedon's an old Greek colony. Where's Chalcedon? Chalcedon is near Byzantium. Modern. Chalcedon would be near modern day Istanbul. I keep doing that. Istanbul's Constantinople and Byzantium, they're all the same place. But yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting because Chalcedon is a Megarian colony, a Greek colony. And it was founded around early 7th century BC. There we go. And it was just another one of those little Greek places. But I think also just in terms of what we're seeing with Paul here, and we got a hint of it in the previous chapters, the absolute extravagance of the Atreides. You know, he's looking across at a footbridge. It's been constructed of crystal stabilized gold and platinum. A bridge made of gold and platinum. with fire jewels from far Sidon. Sounds like a really expensive bridge, you know. Across a pool and fountain filled with water flowers, and there, fountain, water flowers, etc. There's, I suppose, there's wealth in two types, if you like. There's wealth of the Imperium, in terms of gold and platinum, things that matter to within the Imperium. Ultimately, because Melange always buys its coin, doesn't it, really? And the petals, just that, look down at the petals, as clean and red as fresh blood. So, let's see, water flowers, the bridge, etc. Flowers, perfume will be associated with Chani. And I suppose it's interesting as it being opposite to what we're told about and the bad smells, if you like. His eyes absorbed the scene without pulling him from his spice thraldom. And again, you know, the use of that word, to be a thrall is to be a slave. You know, and just and we said that at the start of the chapter here, he's immersed in the screaming odor. He's looks, you know, the Atreides scions, if you like, are upping their doses of melange. But he's a slave to this drug, and I think that's really important to note. That terrible vision of a lost moon, the vision suggested a monstrous loss of individual security. Perhaps he'd seen his civilization fall, toppled by its own pretensions. The interesting thing about this is, within the next few chapters, we're going to see how much Paul really knows in terms of his vision. And we're told that the visions are kind of like snapshots, aren't we? That they're a bit like, almost like Polaroids, you know, single framed images of the future. And that obviously this is an example where Paul's got a vision. It's part of it all, but this is an attempt by him to interpret it, I think. Or else it's an attempt by him to dodge, you know, deceive himself a little bit to start with about what the vision's really about. And the amount of times we hear about this in this chapter, the moon, a falling moon, you know, fallen moons. We're going to hear this. Just the moon. This moon had not set. No moon, etc. We get an awful lot of stuff to do with the moon in this. And I just wanted to point out, just if anybody's got a copy of the book there, I've got a few more typos and stuff in this chapter. Though of a different kind. I just wanted to check, is anybody else having the same problem? But a moon, a falling moon. I've got no full stop at the end of that. My copy. I've got another. I think I have a couple of other things like that here. Anyway, here we go. It had taken a massive dose of spice. Sorry, a massive dose of the spice essence to penetrate the mud thrown up by the taro. All it had shown him was a falling moon and the hateful way he'd known from the beginning to buy an end for the jihad. To silence the volcano of butchery, he must discredit himself. Disengage, disengage, disengage. This is the thing we keep hearing. You know, will he want to disengage? What are the consequences of this, etc., etc.? So, floral perfume from the garden roof reminded him of Chani. He longed for her arms now, for the clinging arms of love and forgetfulness, but even Chani could not exercise this vision. What would Chani say if he went to her with the statement that he had a particular death in mind? Knowing it to be inevitable, why not choose an aristocrat's death? Ending life on a secret flourish, squandering any years that might have been. To die before coming to the end of willpower. Was that not an aristocrat's choice? I think that whole little section is very interesting. This floral perfume is reminding him of Chani, but even Chani, I suppose, within his mind, can't get rid of this vision of the moon. And here we go. What would Chani say if he went to her with the statement that he had a particular death in mind? Now, the question is for who? Here. And what follows, I suppose? Well, would be strongly suggestive that it's Paul. But I think there's a couple of things in this that I think that we can actually relate them to more things. He had a particular death in mind, knowing it to be inevitable. Why not choose an aristocrat's death, ending life on a secret flourish, squandering any years that might have been? So why not just go mental, piss it all up against the wall, big blowout? That's what I would assume from that. The aristocrat's choice. Go spend your money, go rapey, go killy, do whatever the hell you want with all the wealth and power you want until it just kills you. Could be something else. We've got a number of these kind of things in this country. There's Lord Lucan, for example, who, member of the royal family, committed murder, buggered off to Africa, and would have been a rather easy man to find. I generally think he's dead now, but there's been several attempts to sort of locate him. That's what I call an aristocrat's choice. If you see what I mean, he escaped justice, and nobody, because he's a member of the royal family, nobody really wanted to go for him. Go big or go home. That's it. The aristocrat, Look, put it this way: aristocrat's a really funny word, I think. How was it? So an aristocrat's choice, aristocrat's death would be a particularly selfish one, wouldn't it? It would be an exhibition of power and wealth and decadence and doing whatever you like. Aristos is Greek for best. Kratos is, depending on how you translate it, power or strength or force or any of these kind of things. So an aristocrat is the best ruler. That's kind of what it means. I disagree. I still look, if anybody knows that joke, about the aristocrats, that's it's a very famous joke. I think lots of people tell it a particular way. I think there's a Jewish comedian who's I can't remember his name for the life of me. He's an American. His version of the aristocrat joke is that by far the best. And, it's the level of filth and degradation that you can get into the joke. So it's an interesting thing. If he has a particular death in mind, is it for himself? Will it include Chani's death? And he's sort of saying, well, if it's inevitable, why not choose something else? It's kind of funny in a way that there are things, I think, within Paul's character to do with prescience and all of these kind of things, and they're actually just things that we all deal with. To be honest with you, I'll see if I can maybe find an example as we go along. But I got thinking about prescience in my life and how I've had to deal with it, and particularly in relation to this. Not wanting to sort of bring the tone down or anything, but in caring for my parents, if you know what I mean. With my dad, I got this is a terminal diagnosis. So same with my mum. So we were given 9 months with my mum. So I know what the future for those 9 months is. And in fact, it turned out not to be 9 months. It turned out to be 6. And so I've kind of lived with prescience, if that makes sense. I know something's going to happen. I know it's going to happen within a particular time frame, and I know there's nothing I can do about it. Except do your best, if you see what I mean. But that it just made me think a bit about it in those terms. And what can you do, and can you try to change anything, or how do you go along with something like that? And for me, it's pretty much one foot in front of the other until the day that you know about it comes, and then everything changes because you tend not to look past that idea, if you like. Excuse me. So, I'll see if I can find it when I get to it, but there's a couple of things that just kind of made me think, actually, do you know what? Paul's prescience is actually, foreknowledge is actually not really different than anything that we might know is coming one day, if you see what I mean. So he stood crossed to the lat opening in the grillwork, went out onto a balcony, which looked upwards to flowers and vines trailing from the garden. His mouth held the dryness of a desert march. So it's interesting that within all of this change around Paul, this is just around Paul's citadel palace, etc. in Arrakis. Excuse me, the vast amount of wealth that's been spent, water everywhere, almost greenery, gardens, flowers, all of this stuff that was kind of only imaginable within the sort of cruel wealth of the Harkonnens prior to this. It's all here, but at the same time, we have that contradiction of the dryness that his mouth held of a desert march. There's something, he's scared here. This is Paul under the word that's used is terror. He's terrified. Moon, where is that moon? He thought of Alia's description, the young woman's body found in the dunes, a Fremen addicted to Samuta. Everything fitted the hateful pattern. And Paul's thoughts are here, you do not take from this universe, it grants what it will. There's a pattern here. Everything that's happening is setting into that pattern. Each step forward is part of this pattern, and it's part of a particular path, I think, that Paul has chosen. Now, I thought this was kind of interesting. The remains of a conch shell from the seas of Mother Earth lay on a low table beside the balcony rail. He took its lustrous smoothness into his hands, tried to feel backward in time. The pearl surface reflected glittering moons of light. He tore his gaze from it, peered upward past the garden to a sky, become a conflagration, trails of rainbow dust. There it is, shining in the silver sun. I've got something to tell you, by the way. Let me just, rainbow dust. You say something out loud in this day and age, and suddenly you start getting advertised. Advertised too on YouTube. I was discussing this term with my wife the other day, and the next thing, we're being advertised something, I think it's called rainbow dust or something very similar to it on YouTube, which looks like a kind of dodgy magic mushroom thing. I was really surprised by it. That sounds so familiar to these words that we were reading here, As this rainbow dust would evoke a drug, and it seemed to me it's a kind of name of a drug, isn't it? And it actually it seems that something's always listening these days. Suddenly I'm getting advertised this stuff on YouTube, which I thought was bizarre. Cynthia's saying, I was reminded of the Lord of the Rings appendix where Aragorn decides to die before he goes senile. His choice given his heritage. That's interesting. I haven't read the Lord of the Rings in so long, Cynthia. It's funny enough, I nearly bought a copy of it the other day with my book token because it's a book I don't have anymore. And I used to have the really old one big paperback thing, which was a great book that you can read. I've read it so many times, had read it so many times, and not once had it split. That's interesting. To die before he goes senile, his choice given his heritage. Yeah, and again, he would be an aristocrat, wouldn't he? How you die, there's sometimes not a lot of choice in the matter, And when you die, it's an instantaneous thing. Up until that point, you're living. As I often point out to people who come to visit, my mum was in a coma. People treated her like she was dead, and she wasn't, But yeah, it's and wealth has the ability, in terms of treatments and stuff. Wealth carries a lot in this day and age as well. You can be on a waiting list for years for cancer treatment here, but the king gets cancer and he's in and out in a day. And you have to wonder what. Well, I suppose we have private healthcare in this country as well. But thank you, Cynthia. Yeah, I love the character of Aragorn. I'm actually thinking on very soon. Hopefully going to get some videos written up soon. But something that would be quite easy to do, I think, is I'm really wanting to chat about some of my favorite audio. But the Lord of the Rings, and there's the Hobbit next to it on cassette. Would you believe? I've got those on CD. But I was wanting to have a look at the Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and Old Harry's Game, I think, as examples of the greatest science fiction, fantasy, horror radio shows that there have been, in my opinion, anyway. But yeah, I remember enjoying the appendices of Lord of the Rings. It's something that, again, Dune has in common. That what happens to the what happens to the Fellowship after the War of the Ring. I always liked that Legolas and Gimli took off in their little canoe. It's kind of like they go on holiday together, that sort of thing. That's interesting. Yeah, it's funny. I haven't read The Lord of the Rings since in my 20s, I think, but I'd read it about 8 times before I was 12. I would read it all the time. Kept getting it as a library book, actually, for a long time. I just keep getting it out of the library. The Aristocrat's Death. I was going to go with, what's that? I was going to try and go a wee bit funny. I was reminded by... It sort of reminded me of the Naked Gun, is it? Where Frank Drebin, they're talking about... who is it? Is it O.J. Simpson's character? Neudberg, is it? I can't remember. About he's got a 50%, it's only a chance of that, and Frank says that's not a way to go. Having your nuts bit off by a Laplander, having your parachute, that's how I want to go. I always thought it was very funny. But yeah, I don't know, it's an odd whimsy, I think. If something's inevitable, why not choose something else? And the word is a secret flourish. Squandering any years that might have been. Well, you kind of wonder what he's got in mind here. To die before coming to the end of willpower, was that not an aristocrat's choice? And again, I see what you mean in terms of... Thank you for that comment, Cynthia. Yeah, this must be driving him mad. And ultimately, sure, if as we know, ultimately what happens to Alia. How would you deal with this kind of thing? He thought of Alia's description. The young woman's body found in the dune. I've read that. Sorry. The conch, by the way, yeah. Rainbow dust. I lost my track of thought there. The conch shell was interesting. From the seas of Mother Earth. A continuity there. And it also evokes wealth, doesn't it? It's an antique, but it's suggestive of water as well. It's a conch shell from the seas. Lustrous smoothness, pearl surface. Again, there's a suggestion of wealth, but regardless of that, it reflects back glittering moons of light. He can't get away from these moons here. Tore his gaze away from it, peered upward past the garden to the sky, become a conflagration of trails of rainbow dust shining in the silver sun. And his thoughts here are, my Fremen call themselves children of the moon, he thought. So is this maybe my civilization? Is that what the moon represents? That was the first one. Maybe it's the children of the moon. Maybe that's what the Fremen are. And children of Mazir, if I remember correctly. Let me see. Let's get... I thought, it's best to keep a copy of Dune with its terminology handy. Is that in here? Let's see. Historical Zen Sunni Fremen term for themselves, the people. Is it something like that? The children of the moon is how the Fremen are referred to. Yeah. The other thing is, I think, if we do think about in terms of sun and moons, we would associate Paul with the sun here. The idea of being a sun king, this kind of thing. And the traditional stories of sun deities and moon deities is often a pursuit, isn't it? The sun chases the moon, or the moon chases the sun across the sky. It can be like a divine hunt, these kind of things. And of course, Paul and Alia are kind of representations of Apollo and Artemis as well. My Fremen call themselves children of the moon, he thought. He put down the other thing is, why this little conch shell, I suppose. And I think it's a little bit... I was going to ask, what does anybody associate the conch with? And if anybody as soon as I see the right answer, what book do you associate the conch with? And I just thought that was interesting. A conch is to me, ever since, I just want to see if anybody gets it on the same sort of drift that I am. But the conch shell is definitely something to do with seas, but wealth as well, and an artifact, and he owns it. and it just sits on a wee table. I'm amazed it would survive that long into the future unless it had been preserved or something, you know. Cynthia's saying contrast the privilege of Paul's choice to the soon-to-be pregnant Chani, who will die at childbirth whether she wants to or not. Yes, well, that's what we're going to do. That, Cynthia, it's absolutely talking about his own death here. Once, by the time we're through this, we know it's someone else's death as well. Ultimately, Paul's taken that. Yeah, he's made that choice. They're disengage. It's constantly suggested in Ali as well that they can walk away, and if they walk away, they'll live. There's many futures, but it's kind of like us all. You turn left or turn right, you know. But indeed, Chani, and it's very interesting what you say, Cynthia, because oddly enough, I was flicking through that chapter where last night where Chani realizes what's happened. And he removes choice from her. Well, he tells her not to do something, basically, at that point as well, and she really wants to do it, and he's taking away choices, but it's to create a certain path, isn't it? Yeah, that's a very good point. And again, see, this is the thing. We're talking about someone who's prescient. He's meant to have these. He's having to process this and trying to figure it out. So for the first option he's gone was, is this my civilization wrecking itself? Maybe it's the Fremen. Maybe that's what the moon represents. The only thing I thought that was interesting, by the way, is we're not kind of told which moon. You know, is it the hand moon or the mouse shadow moon? I'd associate the mouse shadow moon with Paul. Well, we associate both of them with him, don't we, really? But if the mouse shadow has a companion, then it's the other moon. And it really does make it. It really does make it. It makes a good question. I wished which moon. There's two moons, you know, and it's almost as if it's the moon from Earth in a funny way. The moon, you know, you wouldn't call, if you have two moons in your sky, you wouldn't call one of them the moon. You know, the moons is what they would be, and they would have separate names, but it's just in relation to all of Mother Earth. This is all about the moon, and I couldn't make a connection with it to either of the two moons from Dune, if that makes sense. So that's kind of what I thought it should do. So on we go. He put down the conch, strode along the balcony. Did that terrifying moon hold out hope of escape? He probed for meaning in the region of mystic communion. He felt weak, shaken, still gripped by the spice. At the north end of his plasmeld chasm, he came in sight of the lower buildings of the government warren. Foot traffic thronged the roof walks. He felt that the people moved there like a frieze against a background of doors, walls, tiled designs. The people were tiles. When he blinked, he could hold them frozen in his mind. A frieze. A moon falls and is gone. That's a bit interesting. We get these tiled, do with the tiles throughout this. We'll see it again whenever we've had it already, kind of within Paul's chamber, if you like, the big where he speaks. I don't know, what do we call it, his big hall? But we'll see it again whenever Reverend Mother Gaius Helmoheim is taken to see Paul by Banerjee. These tiles, but it's almost like what I got from it is that the tiles are almost like a two-dimensional snapshot of the people. Possibly that it's almost a bit like his almost a bit like his vision. Freeze images, you know. The moon falls and is gone. Falls in his way. A feeling came over him that the city out there had been translated into an odd symbol for his universe. Okay. So the buildings he could see had been erected on the plain where his Fremen had obliterated the Sardaukar legions. Ground once trampled by battles rang now to the rushing clamour of business. Keeping to the balcony's outer edge, Paul strode around the corner. Now his vista was a suburb where city structures lost themselves in rocks and the blowing sands of the desert. Alia's temple dominated the foreground. green and black hangings along its 2,000 meter sides displayed the moon symbol of Muad'Dib, falling moon. So symbols associated with Paul is this, the moon is, falls and is gone. It's maybe him. On the green and black hangings along its 2,000 meter size, displayed by the moon symbol of Muad'Dib, a falling moon. I tried to draw even, it wasn't very good, so I ended up doing this wee kind of one here. All right. Oh, that's an eclipse moon, isn't it? Pardon me. Yeah, pseudonymous being says a process cannot be understood by stopping it. Yeah. And that's the thing, I think, isn't it? That as Paul, it's a good point, pseudonymous being, essentially as Paul, as we're moving forward in the story, Paul's vision of the future is coming. Does that make sense? And so it's getting closer and closer to the now. And as there's nothing he can do, it's a question of what can you do, I suppose. There's Adept Karen saying hi, and Lord Crunk saying, hey all, hi folks, thanks very much for joining us. Pardon me, we're not too far into the chapter at the moment. But yeah, so a falling moon. Civilization, Fremen, himself, possibly. Just backing up to the city being a symbol for his universe, the things that were pointed out is it's a once place trampled by battles is now a place that is a rushing clamour of business, mercantile, money. What it once was a warring place, now it's a place of business, if that makes sense. And if that's the metaphor for his universe. Note the possessive pronoun, but it could be a symbol. We're told the moon is another symbol of Muad'Dib. So we've got, the fist, we've got the fish, we've got the kangaroo mouse, we've got the hand. Sorry, it was a bit violent, wasn't it? Towards the camera. We've got the hand, pardon me, and of course the moon. And the two moons, of course, have the symbols of Muad'Dib on them. The little mouse shadow, and of course, that hand. Oh dear. It's interesting. I was looking at the moon a wee while back there, and I remembered that, we used to talk about the man in the moon, if you can see that shape in the moon. But is it the Chinese see a rabbit, don't they? If you can see the rabbit, which I've looked at it, it does look a bit like Muad'Dib. It does look a bit like a kangaroo mouse. It's just a question of how you look at the moon, isn't it? Business, yeah. Falling moon. Paul passed a hand across his forehead and eyes. The symbol, metropolis, oppressed him. He despised his own thoughts. Such vacillation in another would have aroused his anger. He loathed his city. So we've got terror, his fear, his thoughts being oppressed by this place in a sense. That's something that would make him angry at seeing this kind of, possibly this kind of self-pity, this, who knows, in other people. He loathes his city, hates it. Rage now, rooted in boredom, flickered and simmered deep within him, nurtured by decisions that couldn't be avoided. You say a process cannot be understood by stopping it. It's unavoidable. Here we go, folks. I think, a lot of keys to Paul's real character here. He knew which path his feet must follow. He knows. He'd seen it enough times, hadn't he? So we've been discussing, does Paul know? And the answer is yes. That's what I've written. My wee note is yes, he knows. He knows all about everything that's going on here. And it's a question of not... it's interesting that as pseudonymous being says a process cannot be understood by stopping it. If he's going down a certain path, he can't stop it. He's got to commit to it. And that might include things like not telling Chani you're going to die in childbirth because you're being, poisoned by Irulan. All of these different things, we have to assume that he knows about them. I think at this point, because he's just told us. Once long ago, he thought of himself as an inventor of government. Yeah, that's good. But the invention had fallen into old patterns. It was like some hideous contrivance with plastic memory. Shape it any way you wanted, but relax for a moment and it snapped into the ancient forms. Forces at work beyond his reach in human breasts eluded and defied him. So, plastic memory, shape it any way you wanted, but relax for a moment and it falls back into the old traditional ways. So he looks at himself as an inventor of government, that he's created a new type of government. And of course, if we know a little bit about these things, he hasn't really. Paul is a good imitation of quite a number of people in history, and there have been more than they're not necessarily that. And there's enough of them. A few Roman emperors consider themselves gods. Some usually Roman emperor sometimes are deified upon their death, but there's a few that go for it during their life. But stop what you're doing and everything will fall back into the old patterns. He thought of himself as an inventor of government. That's kind of takes a lot upon himself, doesn't he? An inventor of government. That's kind of delusional, isn't it? I invented government. An inventor of no. Paul stared out across the rooftops. What treasure of untrammeled life lay beneath these roofs? He glimpsed leaf green places, open plantings amidst the chalk red and gold of the roofs. Green, the gift of Muad'Dib and his water, orchards and groves lay within his view, open plantings to rival those of fabled Lebanon. And here we go. The Fremen, was it Muad'Dib spends water like a madman, is what the Fremen said. And Paul put his hands over his eyes and the moon fell. I'll come back to that in a wee second. Again, just a bunch of colours there. The leaf green, obviously the whole open plantings amidst the chalk red gold of the roofs. This is wealth beyond imagining to those in the first book of Dune. Green is the gift of Muad'Dib and his water. Orchards and groves lay within his view, open plantings to rival those of fabled Lebanon. We're going to get a bunch of places named here. As Frank, as always, he'll throw in a few real ones from our world and then chuck in something futuristic as well. Just interesting in terms of colours and stuff, folks. I was watching a little thing the other day just about somebody talking about Ireland and India getting their independence from Britain, and why Ireland and India's flags are the same colours, if you like. They're both tricolores, though Ireland's is vertical tricolores and India's are horizontal, but the same colours: green, orange, and gold. Green, orange, and white. And it was interesting that I kind of thought that they were talking about what does the green represent, and it's different things in our two cultures. India and Ireland have a lot of similarities historically and culturally. But the green in Ireland represents Catholicism. The green in India represents Hinduism. I can't remember what the orange represented out there, but the orange here, of course, would represent Protestantism as well. And we've always had the orange Catholic Bible and stuff. It's a big thing in my part of the world. If you see, I was just thinking about the different associations with green. Green's a colour associated with Islam as well, for example, black and green. But green is the gift of Muad'Dib and his water. Plantings to rival those of fabled Lebanon. So Muad'Dib spends water like a madman. And we'll come back to that later on. I think it's... there's something that we need to kind of, I'm hoping I can make a wee slash here to come back to that. Let me see, that's note number, tell you what, I'll write it on my hand. That way it's there. Look back at note number 20. Put his hands over his eyes and the moon fell. Well, that's the wee thing I did there. I figured his hands wouldn't stop him from seeing. I like doodling with these wee things here, folks. And his view of the future is narrowed further by most of the possible past being worse than the least worst one. Yeah, it's almost a damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you see what I mean, Adak Karen saying, I remember being confused by the moon mentions first time I read Messiah. Took me a while to realize it probably has nothing to do with one of the actual moons of Arrakis, more a general symbol. For Fun Doodles to sit on, being, I've got these books are covered in them, but just to help me, little visual thing. Picture paints 1,000 words sometimes, doesn't it? But yes, indeed. But that's the thing. As much as it's a metaphorical moon, Karen, what I always thought was that just in terms of how you would do this in this book, that I would have thought it should be one of the moons here, but it's the moon, and that would suggest it's Luna, our moon. So the moon fell. It's happened. He dropped his hands, stared at his metropolis with clarified vision. Buildings took on an aura of monstrous barbarity. They stood enormous and bright beneath the northern sun. Colossi. Every extravagance of architecture a demented history could produce lay within his view. Terraces of meager proportions, squares as large as some cities, parks, premises, bits of cultured wilderness. Superb artistry abutted inexplicable prodigies of dismal tastelessness. Details impressed themselves upon him. A postern out of most ancient Baghdad, a dome dreamed in mythical Damascus, an arch from the low gravity of Atar. Harmonious elevations and queer depths all created an effect of unrivaled magnificence. A moon, a moon, a moon. Now, come back to that. Let's have a wee look. There's some stuff here. Again, with that by the way, we're kind of getting, the metaphors for Paul, that as much as that, hands and vision are the two big things in this book that Herbert uses to, the symbols, if you like. And remember that in this universe, it's mentioned in the book there in Jihad, symbols are really important to people. I live in a country where they're ridiculously important, where people will die over a picture of a red hand, or a shamrock or something like that. Ridiculous, But there's he dropped his hands, stared at his metropolis, clarified vision. Now, I think this is interesting. One of the words that I love for its kind of interesting nature, if you like, is the word barbarian. We've got barbarity here. And rather interestingly, as we see a number of people talk about who are the Fremen based on, and the Fremen are based on a whole range of people, but number one is that most people go to is the Berbers, who are fascinating people. I've used a couple of images of them. They're also based on the San people of Southern Africa, etc., etc. And whenever we get to God Ember, I'm going to try and demonstrate that some of them are based on the Irish as well. Hopefully, but hands. That's just that covering his eyes. I thought that almost like the little drawing. It reminded me on what's the film? The thing, is it Guillermo del Toro movie? I cannot remember the name of it for the life of me. It's really, really good. Just kind of reminded me on that. But barbarity is actually it's kind of a Greek word that it's how the Greeks described the Berbers. Because the Greeks couldn't handle the Berbers culturally in a funny way, but the barbarian is meant to imitate how the Berbers talked to the Greeks, and that's where the word comes from. And I think it's kind of interesting. I often have a wee joke that I think that civilization is the ultimate barbarity. But generally, the things that freak the Greeks out about the Berbers, by the way, it's nothing particularly bad. It's very funny. One was the way they talk. That's where the word barbarian comes from. Berber, and the other was the fact that these guys wore trousers, or pants, like meal type pants these days, which freaked them out. Just understand this at all. I think it's very funny. It's always been funny to me. So yeah, it's an interesting word. Barbarity, barbarians, etc., etc. One of the things I always thought that I thought was interesting, the word shogun. I used to think a long time ago I had a definition of a shogun as being a barbarian subduing general, and I went, "There's no way he could be a It's a different use of the word barbarian, isn't it? We associate it now, the Conan the Barbarian type, to be a wild plainsman, this kind of thing, tribal." but and therefore to evoke viciousness, and cruelty, which I don't think is the case. It's an interesting word and has all sort of layers of meaning behind it. I think monsters stood enormous and bright beneath, and there's some building colossi. So again, we're reinforcing the extravagance, superb artistry about it, inexplicable prodigies. And I like the comp that he's basically, in order to show off his wealth, he's got basically every form of architecture known to man here. And we have a postturn out of most ancient Baghdad, a dome dreamed in mythical Damascus, an arch from the low gravity of Atar. And again, so we've had Lebanon before. We've got Lebanon, Baghdad, Damascus. Atar is a science fiction place, I think. Excuse me, let's grab the book. And but all of those places would be heavily, well, I suppose we all know where they are in the modern world, but all of those places feature heavily in the Arabian Nights. So yeah, no mention of Atar within the terminology of the Imperium in Dune. 5 minutes, the Australian tertiary admission rank, whatever that means. Now, what have we got here? So, Atar, Atash Azar, is the Zoroastrian concept of holy fire, sometimes described as. Oh, here, I'll tell you what I'm reading has no citation, folks, so take this with a pinch of salt. This is if you type in Atar and go to Wikipedia. I'll have to verify this. We'll just read it anyway. I haven't scribbled it down. Sometimes described in abstract terms as burning and unburning fire, or visible and invisible fire. It is considered to be the visible presence of Ahura Mazda and his Asha through the eponymous Yazata. The rituals for purifying a fire performed 1,128 times a year. Citation needed. Part of a series on Zoroastrian. Is there any? Right, well, there are some citations here in this. In the Avestan language, Atar is an attribute of sources of heat and light, of which the nominative singular form is Atars, source of Persian Atis, which is fire. Once thought to be etymologically related to the Avestian Atharvan. Sorry, I'm going to get me Greek letters in that. Avestan Atharvan, a type of priest, but that is now considered unlikely. So there's a citation for that. The ultimate etymology of Atar, previously unknown, is now believed to be from the Indo-European Tar, which is fire. This would make it related to Latin Atar, which is black, and possibly a cognate of Albanian Vatar, Romanian Vatra, Serbo-Croat Vatra, fire, and Ukrainian Vatra, which is a bonfire. There we go. Later Zoroastrianism, Atar is iconographically conflated with fire itself, which in Middle Persian is Ataksh, if I'm pronounced Ataksh, on one of the primary objects of Zoroastrian symbolism. So there we go. Oh, there's plenty more there, I think, on that. I must have a wee look. Culture and tradition, quintessence of Yada idols, comported into the Zoroastrian hierarchy of divinities. Yeah, that looks quite interesting. Cult of fire in mythology and folklore. In Vendidad 1, Adar battles Azi Dahaka, the great dragon of the sky, and Ferdowsi's Shahnameh Hoshang, the grandson of the first Geomard, discovers fire in his rock. He recognizes it as the divine glory of Ahura Mazda, offers homage to it, and instructs his people to so as well. There's if you look actually there, folks, there's on the Wikipedia page as a royal symbol. We've got a silver coin of Ardashir the first with a fire altar on its reverse. So yeah, it's just there's just one of the first comments there that there's no citation on it. There we go. Atar, holy fire. That's interesting. I could show you something actually from most ancient Baghdad. I went to when I was in Germany, in Berlin. I wanted to go to the Pergamon Museum to see some of the mega structures. The seal of the Gate of Ishtar's in there, and it's on the back of my copy of what is it on the back of my copy? The Epic of Gilgamesh. And I walked into the wrong museum. I was gutted. I had a brilliant time. The museum I did go into was full of classical stuff, all the brilliant stuff, and I actually had the bust of Nefertiti on loan at that time. But some of the things that a poster out of most ancient Baghdad, that kind of thing, a dome dreamed in mythical Damascus, an arch from the low gravity of Atar, harmonious elevations and queer depths all create an effect of unrivaled magnificence, wealth, power, etc. And then we get this a moon, a moon, a moon. I've got a whole pile of comments here, folks, so I'm going to slow down for a wee second and catch up with them. And then Coco 4800 says, Paul realized the moon falling represent Chani's death. Yeah, he's getting there. If there are two, maybe the bigger moon is the moon. Yeah, though I always thought it to be a symbolic moon. Yeah, it's kind of, and the moons are quite, if I was a Fremen, it'd be the mouse moon and hand moon, wouldn't it? Surely, just to, we call it the moon because we've only got one. Actually, we don't, haven't we? We've got two, don't we? Chani is one of the satellites of the Earth, I believe. If you want to know something, by the way, my full name, I'm Russell Terence Sloan. I'm from an Ivan Cruthny family. There you go. Or my name is supposed to be associated with that. Cruthny is a goddess worshipped in Ireland. Separate from goddesses like Danu, for example, and Crom Croch. And they're supposed to be, it's kind of actually a form of Protestant iconotropy. And I've actually got the books here that kind of suggest that there are 7 families in Ireland that are we're called the ancient kindred, would you believe? And that's where the Earth's second moon gets its name. I'm going to show you these things because we're always talking about hands and stuff. I've shown them to people before. Where do I keep my Irish textbooks? That's a good question. I've got 3 of these, and they're kind of to do with the history and identity and culture of Ulster. For anybody who's interested, by the way, if you search Northern Ireland, Ulster, for example, and even Ireland, heraldry, hands everywhere. Fish, by the way, also. Where I live, just up the road, is the salmon leap. And the salmon leap is actually a mythical martial feat performed by Cocoon. But the fish in the hand and the moon, again, yes. And what Coco is, of course, we do realize that it's about Chani. But, and I'm going to suggest that all of Paul's suggestions here are correct. It is about Chani. It is about his civilization falling. It is about the Fremen, and it's about him too. I think they're all. And remember how Frank loves to intertwine these. But we can take this metaphor for the moon. It is going to be Chani, but I think it represents all of the things that he's suggesting here. And I don't know if you agree with me or not. But each time I look at one, I consider what happens further down the book. Does his civilization? Yeah, okay, that falls. What about the Fremen? We know what happens to them. Bye-bye. We know what happens to Chani, and we know what happens to Paul. And so the moon falling fits all 4 of these ideas, I think. And I think that's interesting because Frank likes to do that. And if we think about the 4 deaths of Leto II, for example, we'll get there one day, hopefully. But yeah, let's see. Coco says, Coco 4800 says, I thought the recollection of the jihad told by the Fremen conspirator to Skytail before Skytail kills it was beautifully written. Excellent comment. Thank you. About his first time experiencing the ocean on a foreign world. Yeah, we do love to point out when Frank's writing goes really nice. I think Frank's a very good writer, Coco. In fact, I think he's an exceptional writer, but there are wee bits occasionally, I quite like pointing out occasionally little bad things about his writing, but I've been looking at his writing predominantly this time that I look at the book rather than approaching it from any particular theme or anything. I just thought I would enjoy him, try to give myself a bit of enjoyment about it this time rather than working my arse off. Just enjoy the language because it's something that I do enjoy. I love a good writer. And there's lots of great examples of, he's a damn good writer, I think. I do bring him up on his songs and poems, I have to say. But that's a very nice thing to say, Coco. Sudol's being Pan's Labyrinth, thank you. It was right, yes. What a Pan's Labyrinth. Everybody's just got something buried in your head. What a great, hence the wee hands, and he's covering his eyes. But the whole point is he can't. If you see it, I mean, that's why, hence my wee doodle of the eyes through the hands, Thank you very much, guys. Yes, indeed. Pan's Labyrinth. If anybody hasn't seen that, what a wonderful film. Great minds, though, think alike, they do. Coco 40 was Western civilization the most barbaric? Of course. It's funny, I'll say this, folks. Every time I hear, I hear arguments, particularly, there's within what they call the culture wars, political discussions over race, empire, imperialism. That's all come forward these days. It's all in the zeitgeist, and it's all out there. And all of it falls down when you come to where I live. And it is amazing. For example, the Irish aren't considered white by all the other whites. For example, when I hear people in America talking about whitey, if you see it, I mean, that's not us. We're not white, as we like to say. I'm almost translucent. We're beyond white. Irish and Scottish people tend to ignite in the sun, but we're pale. We're not white. And you stick me next to a white person, you'll see. It's hard to believe when you look at me on a screen, but put me next to a white person, and you'll see how unwhite I am, how pale I am. I think it's because I can literally see through my skin almost. But yeah, I've stood next to white people looking very, very pasty, I have to say. But it's little things like that. The whole imperialism, white imperialism, for example, Western man. We're the first victims of the British Empire. That's white on white, if you like, if you understand. And unfortunately, the British Empire is still here. Northern Ireland is under the control of the English government, and we have a completely sectarian society that's split down the middle pretty much these days. And the Catholics and Protestants, interestingly enough, the Protestants have always had more people because of the gerrymandering, but it's been a breeding war. Would you believe? The Catholics always thought we're going to outbreed you. And one day, simply put, because we don't use contraception, there'll be more Catholics than Protestants in Northern Ireland, and that's pretty much almost here. And it's interesting because the other thing is that we've often looked to the West, and this is interesting. As you get this idea in Lord of the Rings, if you like, into the West, this kind of thing. It's the same in Ireland in our mythology. We have a magical island that rises supposedly once every 7 days off our coast. It's called High Brazil. But the West, where all our people have fled and emigrated to, is America. That's West to us, and even England is East. England represents the East. I always think it's an interesting thing. It's one of these terms: Western civilization, Eastern civilization, Oriental, Occidental, whatever you want. Where's the line? Where does one begin the other? And it's almost a bit like politics, where people say I'm on the left or the right. I can't understand that. To me, the political world is a sphere. If you're on the left or the right, that's like the equator to me, and they both will ultimately meet. But barbarity, what is it? I mean, if you look into these, what we think of as barbaric, or the other word I hate, Coco, is primitive. I absolutely loathe people whenever they talk about a culture that they think isn't as advanced as theirs, and they'll call it, they're a bit primitive. They don't even. That's another failure to understand the meaning of the word. And they're used as slags, aren't they? They're used to put down people. And of course, if you look at people like the Berbers, for example, going back to ancient times, this is a civilization. These are smart, educated people who can live, not educated, but educated in the ways of the world, life education. That understanding of how to live within your own environment, etc. I've got a couple of these masks up here. There you go. Berbers and the Bedouin was the other ones I was thinking on. Sorry, I might be mixing up. But the Berber language. Let me just quickly check. Berbers. Any descendants of the pre-Arab inhabitants of North Africa, the Berbers live in scattered communities across Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, Mali, Niger, and Mauritania. They speak various Amazigh languages belonging to the Afro-Asiatic family related to ancient Egyptian. There we go. Berbers. I was mixing them up with the Bedouin there a little bit. That's just in terms of there we go, Berber languages. Tamazigh, yeah. Actually, if there's something else that I'm gonna. Is that it? Amazigh and Tamazigh. There's another word that we're going to encounter soon. Actually, that comes. I think I was reading a little bit ahead in the book that comes from that. But yes, not to get myself mixed up, Berbers, Bedouin, etc. The San people of Southern Africa. There's a whole bunch of people that the Fremen are modelled on. Yeah, interesting. I love this stuff. And as I always keep pointing out, folks, I'm sitting reading away at where am I at the minute? I'm loving this, but I'm reading this. Where am I? 1,000 Nights and One Night, volume 3. While I've been reading Dune Messiah, and it's almost as if this is filling in places like Arrakis, for example. The imagery here, the places, the names, and stuff like that. It's I've been really enjoying reading the two in tandem, and almost this sense of the artwork in these books, but almost how you might imagine Arrakis would be like something out of the 1001 Arabian Nights. That's what I thought. So all of these places of the ancient world, associate with desert cultures, and that, if you know what I mean, that kind of thing. And we had, what do we have? We've had Chalcedon there, by the way. I didn't really tell you much about Chalcedon, did I? I thought that was where we got Sedon from. Oh, no. There we go, Chalcedonians. Let me just quickly let you know a wee bit about that. Just on Wikipedia again. So, what does it say here? What did I say? Tell you it was a Megarian colony, wasn't it, from about the 7th century BC? Let's see. It was an ancient maritime town of Bithynia in Asia Minor. It is located almost directly opposite Byzantium, south of Scutari, which is modern Üsküdar, and is now a district of the city of Istanbul. Oh yeah, it's actually part of it. There you go. Named Kadıköy. The name Chalcedon is a variant of Chalcedon, found in all the coins of the towns, as well as in manuscripts of Herodotus' History, Xenophon's Hellenica, Arrian's Anabasis, and other works. I've never read Arrian's Anabasis. I must have a go at it. The one that I've read is Xenophon's Anabasis, which is the Anabasis. Everyone else's is a copy, isn't it? A pale imitation. Except for the Maiden's Tower, almost no above ground vestiges of the ancient city survive. That's it. Oh, here, hang on. There's the Maiden's Tower there. There it is. You can see it. That's interesting. There we go. That was Chalcedon. So a number of places kind of mentioned in and around that part of the world, and Middle East, etc., etc. Falling Moon. Where did I get to? Sorry, I've jumped back here in my notes. But yeah, where does the West begin? Where does the East begin? I often wonder about that. And I often wonder sometimes how other cultures consider us, the Irish, if you see what I mean. How people in the East see us, how people in the West see us, because we are oddballs here. It's a land of religious mania. Here we are. And of course, that Colossi, everything's huge, these buildings, And the one other wee thing I liked about that was that the vulgarity of it, if you like. It says a superb artistry abutted inexplicable prodigies of dismal tastelessness. Details impressed themselves upon, and so on. But I thought that was funny, that his wealth is kind of gaudy, isn't it? It's huge in scale, but dismal tastelessness makes me think about a lot of architecture these days. And then we have a moon. So, there's something very interesting coming up here, isn't it? Paul, frustration tangled him. He felt the pressure of mass unconsciousness, the burgeoning sweep of humankind across his universe. They rushed upon him with a force like a gigantic tidal bore. He sensed the vast migrations at work in human affairs, eddies, currents, gene flows, no dams of abstinence, no seizures of impotence, nor maledictions could stop it. Now, what we've got here, I've just written, is once again his universe, possessive. I've got another missing full stop here after gene flows, I believe. Hey ho. Let's see. What number is that? 23. Gene flows. Yeah, because I've got gene flows, no dams after it, and no has a capital letter. Ooh, there's a wee fly has crawled into my page, and I don't want it to get flattened. Come on, where'd you go? There we go. I am that guy, by the way. I'm the person that won't hurt a fly. Right, that's where we are. Sorry about that. So, just to let you know, what I think we've got there is a description of the other memory personalities clamoring at him. The presence of mass unconsciousness, that's the other memory. Burgeoning sweep of humankind across his universe, rushed upon him with a force like a gigantic tidal bore. He sensed the vast migrations at work in human affairs. Eddies, currents, gene flows, no dams of absence, no seizures of impotence, no maledictions could stop it. Nothing can stop it. It's inevitable. And it's almost like, I think we get that later on, possibly in other books, but we get examples of all of the, I think they all kind of gang up on a person almost, if you like, or themselves. But I just thought that was very interesting. And it gives us a little bit of insight into, that's what I thought there. That's an example of the other memory at work. Human affairs, eddies, currents, gene flows, no dams of absence, no seizures of evidence, maledictions could stop it. And it's an interesting thing that migration is has always been fundamental to human existence. And if people hadn't, when places become uninhabitable or too dangerous, you move. And we can see that from just the development of mankind out of Africa. It's very interesting. But yeah, in this day of borders and things like that, of nations, we really aren't keen on people migrating, are we? We don't know, this is our land, this is your land. See that imaginary red line there? This belongs to us and it doesn't belong to you. This kind of thing. Is it Thor Heyerdahl? He says, I've heard of something like, I've heard of borders, but but I've never actually seen one. They only exist on maps. These red lines. Something I often wonder about in this day and age where the climate is changing is that some people are going to have to migrate. There's places where it's going to become uninhabitable. Are very difficult to live, So this tidal forces are moon derived. So a fallen moon means no tides. What do we lose when the tidal rhythm dies? That's a good point. Again, that's affecting tides, water as well. There's a lot here, isn't there? I genuinely think there's more. There's a lot more in this chapter than meets the eye, and I'm just kind of trying to figure it out. But this is one of the few chapters we really get inside Paul's head. I think to a good degree. Muad'Dib's jihad was less than an eye blink in his larger movement. The Bene Gesserit swimming in this tide, this is interesting. Right, let me just read that again. In fact, let me grab the book here rather than read my notes. So Muad'Dib's jihad was less than an eye blink in his larger movement. The Bene Gesserit swimming in this tide, that corporate entity trading in genes, was trapped in the torrent as he was. And we've got that word tide there, something when you're talking about tidal forces. The Bene Gesserit swimming in this tide. Take away the moon, as you point out. What happens to the tide? Visions of a falling moon must be measured against other legends. Other visions in a universe where even the seemingly eternal stars waned, flickered, died. What mattered a single moon in such a universe? Well, that's kind of interesting. First of all, what we've got there, pardon me, we talk about the end of type of life on Arrakis and the beginning of business, enterprise, this kind of thing. We have the Bene Gesserit here described. This is the first time I think we've heard them described as this. Always been the sisterhood, the witches, all of this kind of thing. Corporate entity. There we go. That's interesting. The Bene Gesserit swimming in this tide, that corporate entity, corporation, trading in genes, there we go, was trapped in the torrent as he was. Visions of a falling moon must be measured against other legends, other visions in the universe where even the seemingly eternal stars waned, flickered, and died. What mattered a single moon, one moon again in such a universe? And I thought that's a really good question. What he's suggesting is, okay, what do I know about mythology and moons? If you see what I mean. Are there other stories, legends about moons falling? Of course, our moon is called, depending on your culture, Luna. The sun is called Sol. That's where we get the words Luna. Now, she's also gods associated with the moon would be Selene. Oh, there's quite a few Greek and Roman gods associated with the moon. Let's see. Cynthia. There you go, Cynthia. That's interesting. There you go, Cynthia, from your own name, borrowed from the Latin Cynthia from ancient Greek Cynthia, feminine of Cynthios, Cynthian, or pertaining to Mount Cynthus, a mountain of Delos, celebrated as the birthplace of Apollo and Artemis. There you go. Cynthia's Artemis is associated. Literary is the moon, Luna, Selene, etc. And a female. There you go. Moon gods and moon goddesses, and I'm just looking at the moon. Let's see if we can. Is there names and etymology? Here we go. Earth's natural sample, simply moon with a capital M. The noun moon is derived from the Old English mona, which, like all its Germanic cognates, stems from Proto-Germanic menon, which in turn comes from the Proto-Indo-European mensis, which is month from earlier menot, genitive menaces, which may be related to the verb measure of time. So it says occasionally the name Luna is used in scientific writing and especially in science fiction to distinguish the Earth's moon from others, while in poetry Luna has been used to denote personification of the moon. Cynthia is another poetic name, though rare, for the moon personified as a goddess, while Selene, literally the moon, is the Greek goddess of the moon. There we go. And I know there's plenty if we go into like other mythologies, etc. Everyone's got a goddess of the moon, etc. Moon gods and sun gods are amongst our very earliest kind of nature divinities and kind of things like that. So there we go, Cynthia. We've got a Dune connection for you. I like that, and we've also connected to the children of Leto, who are Artemis and Apollo. Very excellent. I like that. That's good. Yeah, Moonfall. I remember. Was it the version of H.G. Wells is the Time Machine that's directed by his grandson, H.G. Wells' grandson. I can't remember his name. I think it's Guy Pearce in it, and I think it's got a fallen moon, this kind of thing, or destroyed moon. But yeah, the absence of it's something that would terrify people. This kind of thing. And I said the sun and moon, depending on ancient cultures. I always think it's interesting. You would imagine that the sun would be the main deity in any religion. It's often not the case, actually, because people don't fear the sun that much. If you see what I mean, it tends to be thunder and lightning gods, these kind of things, But nothing but other visions in a universe where the seemingly eternal stars waned, flickered, and died. What mattered a single universe? What is a single moon in such a universe? What's the big deal about this? It's just one moon. Far within his fortress citadel, so deep within that the sound sometimes lost itself in the flow of city noises, a 10-string rebaba tinkled with the song of the jihad, a lament for a woman left behind on Arrakis. We've got a few instruments in here. This is probably... There we go. Now, the real instrument is a rebaba. It's spelt slightly differently. It's Rebabah. I'm looking at one now. God, I'd love every one of these instruments. I really would. The rebaba. We've got also for rebab as well. There we go. So rebaba, Rebabah. Made of wood, metal, and skin, single string spiked musical instrument. Let's see, rebab as well. There we go. Rababa. Yeah, we've got that spelling that's in Dune here as well. Arabic rababa, variously spelled rebab, rhubarb. Oh, here we go. This will be fun. Rebab, rhubarb, rebab, rebaba, rabeba, rhubarb, and rebob, etc. Didn't have rhubarb in there. God, it's gorgeous looking. Is the name of several related stringed instruments that independently spread via Islamic trading routes over much of North Africa, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and parts of Europe. The instrument is typically bowed, but it is sometimes plucked, and it is one of the earliest known bowed instruments, named no later than the 8th century, and is the parent of many bowed and stringed instruments. There's mainly 3 types. Oh, it's gorgeous. Oh, I love one. I'm looking at them. Oh, wow. Since series 1902, yeah. Wow, if anybody's into their musical instruments, check out Rebab on a picture of KPH, not a Projo, famous Indonesian rebab player. His instrument looks insane. A lot. And I've got a Series 1900 TR here. That's like a spike fiddle, isn't it? And then there's another chap, an Iraqi Jalza, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, player Salih Shamail at the first Cairo Congress of Arabic Music. It's a beautiful looking little. There's quite a bit of variation in them there. I've got a wee comment here in the history. It just says the rebab was heavily used and continues to be used in Arabic Bedouin music and is mentioned by Johann Ludwig Burckhardt in his travelogue Travels in Arabia. Of instruments, this is the quotation, of instruments they possess only the rababa, a kind of guitar, the ney, a species of clarinet, and the tambour or tambourine. It's called Joza in Iraq, named after the soundbox material made of a coconut shell. There's also a bowed instrument in Persian music named the Comanche, which has a similar shape and structure. It's spread to different regions, including Southeast Asia, through Islamic trading routes. For a famous Iranian singer and rebab player, see Hassan Egzar Chani. It's a gorgeous, the very first one there, I think the first couple of pictures are beautiful, absolutely lovely little instrument. I'm a stringed instrument player. I just love stringed instruments. And I've got a uke. What have I got here? I've got uke, 4 guitars and a bass. But I love stringed instruments, and I actually quite like ethnic instruments. I don't really own any, but I would really like to get a few. Mainly because my hands are a bit wrecked, and a lot of these instruments are a lot smaller and kinder on your wrists, etc. You know. Benny Gesserit as a corporate entity, I think that's important. It's just how he looks at them, I think, but that's what they are. If you remove all the mysticism, trading in genes, I think it's very interesting. So, sorry, just stopping a wee bit to say that, that's a 10-string rababa. He likes adding lots of strings to these things. Here we go. It tinkled with the sound of the jihad, a lament, sad song for a woman left behind on Arrakis. Now, read song I have written here, page 144. When I'm doing my notes, I tend to write the songs and poems and stuff. I tend to write the first couple of lines and the last couple. Excuse me, and then just basically say, check out the book. By the way, these kind of poems, by the way, just very quickly, are the Arabian Nights is riddled with them. What am I on at the minute? I am reading The Loves of Zion al-Mawasif, which is an odd story. Just for an example, I'll very quickly just read you this. This is from the 655th night of the Arabian Nights. Coming to the first arch, he saw these words painted upon it in letters of vermilion. And there are these wee poems all throughout this book. Our house shall have a narrow door, that grief and time may not come in, but friends and laughter, who were thin, shall enter, fatten, and leave no more. On the second arch, these words were graved in gold characters. May this house rise in air, as long as birds chant in its garden blooms, and friendship scents its rooms, as long as flowers die of being fair, as long as new stars come in spring to browse the meadows of the sky, as long as fruits on trees are born and die, live all who use this house. It was just a couple of, and then the last one just from this page, time and the sun shall move above each gentle chamber, and luxurious place of this our house, but if the shadow of love clamber and nibble like a mouse, then time and sun shall leave no trace. Um, this just some of Frank's poems, etc., but some of them do remind me of the Arabian Nights, and this is one of them. Because often the descriptions, the love poems within the Arabian Nights, are very like this. Her hips are dunes curved by the wind. Her eyes shine like summer heat. Two braids of hair hang down her back, rich with water rings. Her hair. My hands remembered her skin, fragrant as amber, flower scented. Eyelids tremble with memories. I am stricken by love's white flame. The song seconded. I'm stricken by love's white flame. I wonder why. My dad used to listen when he used to get drunk, used to listen to a song which was very maudlin and had not. It was he said it reminded his mother or how they met, and it was an IRA song, and it was one of these kind of unrequited love. I'm going to be executed as a virgin and God and all this kind of stuff by the British. Mental, and it sickened me. To be honest with you, so I kind of know how he feels here. A tune for stupid creatures lost in sentimentality. Overly sentimental. As well sing to the Dune impregnated corpse Alia had seen. A tune for stupid creatures lost in has anybody else got that line here? Could somebody confirm just that's what it says? As well sing to the Dune impregnated corpse Ali had seen. I just didn't think that flowed well. Maybe there's a word missing or something. Might as well sing to the Dune impregnated corpse that Ali had seen is what I mean. You might as well sing to a corpse. I think it's weird for a woman left behind from a jihadist, I'm assuming, who's left Arrakis and left his partner there, this kind of thing. It's an odd one, There's Teleos to us saying, evening y'all. Hi Babs, how you doing? Your text has the same wording. I think it's okay, Cynthia. I think it's just a wee bit awkward, I thought. I kind of stumbled over it when I read it. I would have added another word to it, to be honest. But thank you. And yeah, good to see you, Babs. Hope you're keeping well. Just wondering, have you seen the film, Babs? I'm kind of curious to see what... Curious, anybody who's joining us, we'll maybe have a wee chat at the end of the chapter. We're not too far off, but just curious to see what you all think of the movie. There we go. The song is seconded. And we brought this. Might as well sing it to the dead body that's out there in the desert. Alias, what good does that do? Sentimentality. And does that mean that Paul's not happy with sentimentality? I'm not too sure. I've just written that. My only comment next to that is, might as well sing that to the Dune impregnated corpse Alia scene. I've just written that's a bit grim. That's my only note. That's a bit grim. And we're told a figure moved in shadows of the balcony's grillwork and Paul world. Oh, I must think about this actually. The grillwork that we're constantly seeing. Grillwork, that's like a grid, isn't it? It's almost like a... We talk sometimes about the net, is it? When we get onto it later, there's a kind of grid it requires it to see the kind of universe, and it's something. It's much later on, folks. But the fact that he's looking through this, that reminded me of that. I don't know what book it's in. It's well down the road, I think. Figure moved in the shadows of the balcony's grillwork of Paul world. The Gola emerged into the sun's full glare. His metal eyes glittered, And Paul said, is it Duncan, Idaho, or the man called Hate? The Gola came to a stop 2 paces from him. Which would you prefer? Which would my lord prefer? And the voice carried a soft ring of caution. Play the Zen Sunni, Paul said bitterly. Meanings within meanings. What could a Zen Sunni philosopher say or do to change one jot of the reality unrolling before them at this instant? And I've written next, that's quite fatalistic, isn't it? My lord is troubled. It's not a question, it's a statement. Paul turned away and stared at the shield wall's distant scarp, saw wind-carved arches and buttresses, terrible mimicry of his city, nature playing a joke on him. See what I can build. He recognized the slash in the distant massive, a place where sand spilled from a crevice, and thought, there, right there, we fought Sardaukar. That's his thoughts, by the way. I think that's kind of interesting, that the natural world that is Arrakis. All of these, there's a lot of construction talked about here in this chapter. Artificially constructed things, squares, measure proportions, some cities, parks, premises, bits of cultural wilderness, these buildings that are colossi, huge, monstrous buildings, and that they're, superb artistry abutted inexplicable prodigies of dismal tastelessness. This concept, we've also, that the city is a metaphor for his empire, and then we get this, and I think it's very good, and I think the way Frank has done this, just it's a kind of almost a comparison to the artificial world that Muad'Dib is creating on Arrakis to the natural world that's already there. And he's staring at the shield wall, the distance, because that's this natural defense that's around Arrakeen. It's a mountain defense, if you like. Part of it was nuked, but in the first book, he saw wind-carved arches and buttresses, terrible mimicry of his city, nature playing a joke on him, reflecting, if you like, see what I can do, see what I can build. That's Mother Nature taking the piss out of Paul. It's obviously, I don't know, I'm a person that doesn't like cities. And I've lived in, how many capital cities have I lived? I've lived in four different capital cities, actually, big cities. But I'm mainly a small town person, or, I don't like big cities. I don't like London. I'm not too keen on Paris. Not too keen on Belfast. And I hate Edinburgh. I've lived in all of those places, but they're all capital cities. And I'm where I'm at here, the countryside and the seas are just there. The river's there, and the town's over there. I'm at the edge of our town here. Let's just catch up with a few of your comments, folks. That's interesting. Terrasdos says, as a Barbara, I was taught my name meant the stranger, or he who speaks a language I don't understand. Very good. Just sitting chatting about the Berbers. It's what, as far as I know, that's what it meant to the Greeks, you see. And I always, whenever you study classical studies, it's one of those, there are so many weird things in the ancient world. But it's the Greeks were trading with these people, but it's just it's a cultural thing. It's what the Greeks thought of them. Not really used the Greeks. I'm not even sure. It's probably the Athenians I'm thinking of, because my studies would have focused heavily on them. But we'll just say the Greeks. But it was the way they talked, but the Greeks thought they were odd. There's lots of cultures around there, that part of the world, But these guys are a bit odd. Why? The way they talked, and they wore trousers. But that makes sense. The straight, or he who speaks a language I don't understand. And so the Berbers, that kind of thing, I think it's interesting. I was mixing them up with the Bedouin in there. But there was actually a word I was looking at that had something to do with one of the Berber languages that I just noticed there. And I'm no expert on the people at all, but I've got a couple of those wee Bedouin masks up there on the wall that my parents brought me back from North Africa. So I've always... all of these kind of cultures fascinate me, but I'm not well traveled, and I often wonder. I'm a sort of person that rubs people up the wrong way, though. I'm just a curious person, but I often wonder how I would go down in places like that, and I'm quite heavily tattooed as well. Not that matters in some cultures, I suppose. But as much as saying about Irish people in the sun, we ignite. I'm not allowed in the sun technically. I would wear linen, in the summer. Just because I burn so easily, and I've never had a tan in my life. I just get burned, Synonymous being is Annie to Edinburgh being there's sea countryside. Well, it's near enough. Oh no, Edinburgh was a thing for me. It was not just for me, but I was really bad. I had a very bad year there, and I went up there to work. Basically, it was at the time when it was the Edinburgh became the city of culture, and I'd finished a degree in Liverpool. I didn't know whether to go home or just maybe try something different. I didn't know what to do with myself, so I lived in Edinburgh for a year. Nearly froze to death the first night because I had no heating and it was -10. And yeah, just not a good place. And didn't like it. It was more expensive to live in Edinburgh than it is in London. Synonymous, you know. So it's just a personal thing. I used to live in Granton, and if anybody who knows Irvine Welsh, oh god, my old house is it's not train spotting, but hang on, I'll tell you. If you give me a wee second, I'm sure you're probably familiar with train spotting. A lot of my life looked like that in the 90s. A friend of mine compared me to Renton once, but not that we were on heroin or anything, but let me see. Irvine Welsh, I'll tell you what I'm looking for very quickly, and you'll because it's they did make it into a film, and you can see my old house in it. The Acid House, is that it? No, hang on. Yes, it is. It's the Acid House. The Granton Star calls. I lived in Granton, and my old house is my old flat's in it. And Granton's not. Well, you can get the idea from the film, you know. I didn't know anything about it at the time, but okay, Edinburgh's nice to visit, but it's not nice. I didn't like living there. Yeah. Very impersonal place, and hardly met any friends or anything. It's something that not happened in any of the other cities, you know. I was glad you managed to abscond. Yeah, I got the hell out of there. A friend of mine, it was so bad actually. One of my mates took a dive off a 5-story building. He threw himself off the building, and that kind of caused all sorts of problems. And it ended up that some people, you know, when something bad, he lived, by the way, had to bring his parents to him and stuff, and all sorts of things. But it was one of those things where, you know, when the shit hits the fan, people run, that kind of thing. And I don't run, if you see what I mean. But once it was all sorted out, I'd had enough of that. And that's when I decided to move back to Northern Ireland in the year 2000. I've been here since, you know, apart from a brief stop in Liverpool for a few months. But yeah, it's just personal thing, you know. Synonymous. It's nothing bad to the people of Edinburgh or anything like that. But I think we were making a comment about bagpipes the other day. And then I've done work with pipers, by the way. As a poetry and literature person, etc., I've been asked to toast the haggis before, so I've worked with a swordsman and a piper up close and personal. I really enjoyed that. Actually, the piper was fantastic. He's an Irish piper. He's an award. I think he's a champion piper. But we did it in the Wetherspoons, and you should have seen the haggis that they wheeled out. It was the most embarrassing looking haggis I've ever seen in my life. And I cook a haggis usually every year. And God, they're gorgeous, and the smell and the color and all of that stuff. This thing looked like a grey anemic. I've always described it the same way. It was a grey anemic dildo, and it looked nothing like a haggis. And I had to give it this big speech that you know, king of the pudding race, all of this. And it was so. I did a good job. The piper did a good job. The chef did a good job, and the swordsman, when he cut it, did a good job. But the haggis was not. It was just the worst haggis you've ever seen. It was so funny. But there we go. No, sorry, we're getting off track a wee bit there, folks. I do apologise. Yeah, the grill work, a grid, a reference to sea, something. That's what it's reminding me. It's got something to do with Daniel and Marty and Duncan, Idaho, way down in the future of Dune. I think we're into the last 2 books there. But this grill work here is reminding me of that, and it's a thing that he's constantly looking through, or that is constantly referenced in this, a grid, if you like. And I've kind of talked about it in terms of the net. I think that particularly if we look at the Atreides myth and so on, you know. Oh goodness, we're all over the place tonight, aren't we? I figure, right, here we go. So Duncan, Idaho, my lord is troubled. Nature's playing a bit of a joke on him, showing how impressive it can build things. Without, you know, all of that money and wealth. Right there, we fought Sargar. He's talking about sentimentality previously. He's discussed it in the song. Surely this is being a wee bit sentimental, possibly. What troubles you, my lord? Here, the Gola asked. And Paul whispered, a vision, a vision. Ah, says he. When the Talaxu first awakened me, I had visions. I was restless, lonely, not really knowing I was lonely. Not then. My visions revealed nothing. The Talaxu told me it was an intrusion of the flesh which men and Golas all suffer, a sickness, no more. And Paul turned and studied the Gola's eyes, those pitted, steely balls without expression. What visions did those eyes see? And we get this, Duncan, Paul whispered, I am called hate. Paul says this, I saw a moonfall. It was gone, destroyed. I heard a great hissing. The earth shook. And here we get this phrase again. It says, you are drunk on too much time. We've had this before, I think, haven't we? If not, it's a thing that it seems to be a phrase I'm sure that we've heard before, but it might be later on. Ask for the Zansuni and get the Mentat. Like the Dune movie. Very well. Play my vision through your logic, Mentat. Analyze it and reduce it to a mere words laid out for burial. That's quite grim as well, isn't it? Burial indeed, says here. You run from death. I've written yes. He does. You strain at the next instant, refuse to live here and now. Augury. What a crutch for an emperor. I think I should have an exclamation mark there, possibly. But yeah, what a crutch. Augury, divination, and a crutch. And we're often taught about crutches within Dune. I would talk about them in real life, if you know what I mean. When I talk to my students when we're doing mathematics, the calculator is a crutch. That's how I describe it. And my students, and they do a calculator paper, for example, here in the UK, they have to do for GCSE. They have to do a large paper where you get to use a calculator, and then they have to do two smaller papers, one of which you're not allowed to use a calculator. And I teach my students to do almost all of it without the calculator, and then use the machine to check their work, but not to rely on it, if that makes sense. And I think this is the next thing here is Paul found himself fascinated by a well-remembered mole on the Gola's chin. A physical aspect of Duncan, Idaho, that's still on this copy of him, you know. So he's trying to explain the hate. What's going on? And just backing up a little bit, the visions. He talks about when the Talaxi first awakened him. I had visions. That's interesting. I was restless, lonely, not really knowing I was lonely, not then. My visions revealed nothing. Talaxi told me it was an intrusion of the flesh, which men and Golas all suffer, a sickness no more. And I was wondering really what that was. Is it just his imagination kicking in? Does hate have some kind of prescience? I don't think so. But it's more something to do with the nature of him being a Gola, perhaps. It's a little bit confusing, that one, you know. But drunk on too much time, I think he's a bit stoned on too much melange as well. But he's looking for the philosopher, and you know, he's looking for the philosophical rather than the analytical, I think, is what Paul is saying. But if you go, okay, analyze it instead, then reduce it to mere words laid out for burial. To put it to rest, I think, possibly. Burial indeed. You run from death. You strain at the next instant, refuse to live here and now. And I think what he's essentially suggesting there is that as what Paul sees these deaths ahead, and is that focused on these visions that he's not really living in the now? Does that make sense? And he's almost more trying to make sense. Is there any way out of this? Can I? And the answer is no. It's everything's inevitable. I think there's a fatalism about Paul here. And that kind of brings in all sorts of questions about the Dune universe. You know, free will and determination, all this kind of thing, determinism. Does he have any free will at all? So he's focusing on a mole while he's saying this to him. It says, trying to live in this future. Do you give substance to such a future? Do you make it real? So the fact that you're seeing this, this vision of what might be, is it actually you that's making it happen? In which case, free will is back on the table, isn't it? It's, oh, for goodness sake. I've written next to that. That's the killer question. Trying to live in this future, do you give substance to such a future? Do you make it real? Are you the person that makes it happen? Paul says, if I go the way of my vision future, I'll be alive then, he muttered. What makes you think I want to live there? Now, I wonder how much Paul is sort of really dodging the issue here, I think. If I go the way of the vision future, I'll be alive then. So what he's saying is, I won't be dead. And if we go back to the very start of this chapter, what would Chani say if he went to her with the statement that he had a particular death in mind? Knowing it to be inevitable, why not choose an aristocrat's death? Why not pick another death? But he had a particular death in mind for who? It's not him here. And the point is, the moon's gone. It's a future. What Paul is seeing here is a future where he lives and Chani dies. And a son is born to him. That's three aspects of it, if you like. Paul lives, Chani dies, one son. And there's no Chani there in the future. And of course, the interesting thing about that, folks, is whenever we get a little bit down further into Dune Messiah, his vision's not correct, is it? There's something slightly different about it. We all know, well, some of us know, maybe we saw, I've got to stop saying that, and we all know what that is. That's a bit rude of me and a bit presumptuous. I do apologize. I try not to spoil too much as well, I think. It's always hard to spoil a book by like Dune because it does give its readers prescience in a funny way. So there we go. If I go the way of my vision future, I'll be alive then. What makes you think I want to live there? What makes you think I want to live in that universe where Chani is dead? And that's very romantic, I thought, and kind of nice in a funny way. But it'll be tempered by actually everything else, I think. And the real fact is, I suppose, can you be honest with your life partner, your lover, your essentially? We know she's not his wife, but she's concubine. But for essentially, on all intents and purposes, Chani is the woman, as Dune suggests at the very end of it, that we will call his wife in a funny way. Though I don't think of her as his wife, but if we had to put it into those terms, that's kind of what she is. He's not going to save her. He's not even going to give her knowledge, provide her with the prescience of what's coming. And again, we're sort of kind of told, well, maybe to do so is to muck around with it, So the Gola shrugged and says, you asked me for a substantial answer. And Paul asks, where is there substance in a universe composed of events? Is there a final answer at the end? Does each solution produce new questions? Where is there substance in a composed of events? Is there a final answer? Who knows? Does each solution produce new questions? I believe so. Every question that's answered, I've always discovered, has led to another question. It's a good way of examining anything, even including your life. But if you run out of questions, I think you're in trouble. Yeah. I suppose I've run out of questions. The first thing I would have asked is, why have I run out of questions? Get another question in there. It's an interesting question. Does each solution produce new questions? It's kind of almost, does each new path produce new, ways, if you like? It says you've digested so much time, you have delusions of immortality. Even your empire, my lord, must live its time and die. And it's a good point. We've many a Roman emperor's had a delusion of immortality, delusion of godhood, if you like, and empires all fall. All of them. It might take time, but the only thing, by the way, I don't know if anybody knows this, every empire on the earth has one thing in common: they fall, they collapse from they usually overexpand and collapse back to a nucleus. If you see what I mean. But we talk about the Athenians, and as much as we might think about Athenian democracy and all that kind of stuff, after the Persian Wars, basically the Athenians tried to seize control of the Delian League treasury and just went, "We're in charge. You're all ours." As much as we all talk about Athenian democracy, they became an empire too. And it's when basically with Alexander the Great, etc., we consider that done. He turns up and finds another one, there's sea countryside, where Carlos says, and that's always been my question: does Paul see the future, or the path to create a future he desires? And Lord Crunk saying, prescience reveals all paths lead to darkness. Choose your darkness. Yeah, we were saying the other. So I'll take Carlos's one first. It's the right question to ask, Carlos. It's tricky, but I think we'll get our answers in this book, and it's something that I'm going to try to keep pointing out. I think he knows that I can see this particular future. He's picked this path, and he's on it already. And everything that he says and does is part of that route, if you see what I mean. And I think part of this is just trying to see, is there another way out of it? Or is he even just playing his part here, where even doing things like that are part of it, But it's the right question to ask. And to be honest with you, I think it would temper, or not temper, that's the wrong word. I think it would help shape how we view Paul. And to me, it's more of a question of what does he reveal, I think. If you see what I mean. If I knew now that my wife, if I put myself in this position, if I knew somebody was poisoning my wife, that she was pregnant, and I'd said all of this, that it was happening to her, what would I do about it? I'd do a lot about it. I'd kill the person poisoning her straight away. I'd get my wife to a hospital. I would, and even if I had some kind of vision, the universe will fall if I don't save my wife, I wouldn't believe it. I'd act out of love for the person that I married, if you see what I mean. And the rest of the world wouldn't really matter to me, in a funny kind of way. Not that I want to go out hurting or burning the world or anything like that, but I would probably not behave the way Paul is. But then it's hard to put yourself in a position of someone with prescience, isn't it? But that's the odd thing. I was saying, folks, I've been in that position, and prescience. What does prescience mean? It means foreknowledge. That's all. And it's not on. And I think maybe that what Kate is suggesting here, you've digested so much time, you have delusions of immortality. Even your empire, my lord, must live its time and die. This statement is a suggestion that it's almost like you think you're omniscient, omnipresent, this kind of thing. You have prescience, but you're not omniscient. So to be omniscient is to know everything, and that's not a term we talk about in this book. It's prescience. It's to have foreknowledge of something. And as I said, I've experienced that. This is going to happen. Simple as that. What are you going to do about it? And what can you change it? Can you prevent it from happening? All of these things run through your head. And to be honest with you, caring for both of my parents that way, having foreknowledge that they're going to die, given time frames for that. So my father was 2 months, but died in a month. My mum was 9 months, died in 6. So as much as our prescience, our foreknowledge, if you like, was as I should have this, things didn't work out the way we were told, though the consequences and actions were all inevitable. And how I dealt with it, as I said, is kind of just, I don't know what to do. First time I looked after mum, one foot in front of the other, do your best and deal with everything that happens one day at a time. Enjoy that time with my mum, which I did. Spent a lot of time with her, talking all the time. I basically, as much as I always talk about how I wrecked my career and stuff like this, I bought what I bought with that time. What I bought with all of that was 6 months with my mum. Wouldn't trade that for the world, Same with my dad. But it's kind of, I knew what was going to happen. If you see what I mean, I had prescience. I had knowledge and I had facts and information, and it's okay. I can't stop either of those things from happening. there's a single finite end result there, but everything else up until that moment is who knows, and it's like that, I think, you know. But as Lord Kronk saying, prescience reveals all paths lead to darkness. Choose your darkness. How I behaved with that information, how my brother behaved with that information, for example, two very different animals, there's Don Ragnar. Hi, Don. How you doing? Thanks for joining us. I like Dune Messiah. Don Ragnar says these Dune films are atrocious. I just stick with the books. I think, something, there's a hardcore of loyal fans, I think. And as much as I say I went and enjoyed the film, etc., we'll watch it again, I tend to put a professional hat on it, you see, but I'm not the giddy fanboy that a lot of people are out there. And I maybe have a bit more grown-up sensibilities about these things, as do a lot of you. And to love these books, Don, stick with them, because something we point out, everybody loves these books and rereads them again, including me. Goodness, for my sins, we all get something new every time we read these books. There's something you miss, they make you think, don't they? And I heard a comment that that the intellectual nature of Dune puts people off. That's a load of crap. I think it's not presented that way. It's not written that way. It's just a book that whenever you read it, it'll make you wonder and ask questions. And if you've got that kind of mind to look into things, and it's a book that somehow subtly educates you as you read it in a nice way. Dune, as a great kind of adventure story. But there's so much to it, and the way Frank wrote this book, regardless of what you think of him as a writer, I think Frank Herbert has got top writing chops, as I would call it. I think he's a superb writer. But I also think his writing developed, if you see what I mean. He started strong. I think probably his worst book is The Green Brain, which is his third novel. Sorry for slapping, but his first novel, The Dragon in the Sea, I think is phenomenal. And to be honest with you, I think a lot of the pacing and the tightness of this novel, because it's kind of the same length, it kind of reminds me of that there's an acceleration in Dune Messiah, if you see what I mean, as we go through it, and things start moving quickly. We get settled within the book, get to see Paul's empire, the various people, what's happened, but then on comes the conspiracy, and things start going very fast. And it's a bit like his vision here, that we're heading towards it, But the way I described it, Don, is the films are bare bones. Look at the shiny, this kind of thing. And maybe that's what a lot of people want or need or something in this day and age. But it's it's they've gutted it. And the one thing I don't like about it, as I'm going to say, is that they keep talking about Frank Herbert, and we pointed out, I think, a syllogistic fallacy that Denis Villeneuve came up with the other day. I don't think they understand the material at all. And I don't think they've been respectful. And I do think it's interesting that one of the things I said was that particularly YouTube commentators coming down on the Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, all these kind of things, slamming lore, slamming the author's intent, slamming what these people have done to this author's work. No one's bothered here, except us. But to me it's just a film. And I'll tell you what, Don, and everyone else, there's the spice diver David Lynch. There's hope that David Lynch might come back to Dune yet. You never know. I think Lynch's attitude to his film, it should change. We all understand why he hated it, but regardless of what he did, it's a fantastic film. I love it, and it's hugely iconic. And every actor, it's what the flaws that are in Denis Villeneuve's are the strengths, if you like, of David Lynch's film. As much as it's got David Lynch's stamp all over it, you've got really good actors, some of which are just kind of starting out in their careers, if you like. Patrick Stewart's not that well known there. I think Patrick Stewart kind of does Excalibur and Dune, and then he goes on to do Star Trek. But those are the kind of two films I first saw him in. But all the Duncan Idaho is Oh, Richard Jordan, who's a great actor. All of the actors in David Lynch's Dune are exceptional. Everyone does a superb job with what little they're given, and almost all of them are just kind of not really. They've got so little dialogue, etc. But it's the choice from the books. There's I believe both the miniseries and I think the miniseries is great. What Denis Villeneuve's um, Dune should have been the miniseries with better special effects, and you'd have a perfect adaptation of. I thought the miniseries was really good. That's going into Children of Dune, you know. Yeah, but it's just a movie. And Carlos Gonzalez said, I like Dr. Manhattan's view of time in The Watchmen. Time is only linear when viewed from within. He kind of, in the comic book, I was talking about replacing books the other day, Carlos, and I replaced a bunch of my dystopian novels. But we were chatting about how I'd lost all of those graphic novels that I used to have, the ones in particular, the three biggies of the 80s, if you like, is The Watchmen, V for Vendetta, and The Dark Knight Returns. Those are the three I thought they were the three graphic novels that started the turn, if you like, and particularly in American comic books, which I loathed up until then. It's interesting. I've often viewed British comics as quite adult, even at a child for children, if you know what I mean. Whereas American comics I thought were incredibly juvenile, with all the alliterative names and stuff, and the Peter Parkers and all this kind of stuff, and basically peddling out the same idea over and over and over again. But yeah, Dr. Manhattan kind of moves back and forward, and the way they do it with the comic book, isn't it? That interestingly enough, comics, if you want to define a comic historically, literary, it's probably the oldest form of literature that we have. Comic book, graphic novel, if you like, a form of sequential art. And if you define it as sequential art, in other words, art within a sequence therefore a sequence has time. And therefore it has a narrative. Then, some of our oldest stories are from caves and stuff like that, but they are essentially the same as comic books, Don Ragnarsson, Alan Moore, Neil Gaiman, and Grant Morrison in the 90s were the holy trinity that reinvented comic book narrative. That's pretty much the guys. Grant Morrison's Animal Man. I'd love to do something on that. There's one comic, just one story by him. There's plenty of others. I'm pretty sure it's him. It's Animal Man number 7, the Wile E. Coyote story. As Wile E. Coyote as Jesus Christ. That's unbelievable. I nearly swore quite badly there. One of them. Wow. Just what the hell am I reading? And just to fill you in, Don, I love Wile E. Coyote. He's probably my favorite cartoon character from those old Looney Tunes and Warner Brothers cartoons and stuff. Neil Gaiman's Sandman's fantastic. Alan Moore's old 2000 AD guy. Grant Morrison's 2000 AD guy as well. But we love Alan Moore here. My biggest disappointment in a long time is I got a gift book token a wee while back, and I got in fact it's there. There's Alan Moore's. Oh, can we get there? Up there. Oh, that's weird. Hang on. There is Alan Moore's Jerusalem underneath my complete works of Shakespeare. 3 volumes, writing so tiny. And I was really looking forward to it. This is his first attempt at a novel, and I can't read the damn thing. I would need big magnifiers. And I was absolutely appalled by that somebody would publish a book. And it's a box set book that the writing's so small. And I've had it, whenever I bought it, wanted to read it, opened up, and went, I can't read this. And I've got my glasses and I use different magnifiers and stuff, but the writing was so small. I was absolutely gutted by it. But I particularly love Alan Moore's. Alan Moore's behind a whole set of stories within the 2000 AD, which are particularly clever little things. There's Tharg's Time Twisters, and Tharg's Future Shocks, they're called. And I think they're collected. But he's one of those guys. Is he T.B. Grover as well? He wrote under different names, I think, for 2000 AD. That's how we look. There he is. One thing I do like about Alan Moore is he doesn't like people messing with his stories. And of course, the Ballad of Halo Jones is him too, isn't it? Which we love here. That's also 2000 AD. Let me just see. Does it have his... Maybe I'm thinking... he uses pseudonyms Kurt Vile, Gilda Ray, Brilburn Logue, Translucia Baboon. Let me see. Who am I thinking of? I thought he was. Who's TP Grover? If it's correct. No, I'm not saying it, but there was occasionally some of these writers went under different names in 2080. I'm not sure if it is him or not. Don Ragnarsson, Alan Moore's Swamp Thing run was amazing too. Well, got my wife to watch. We watched the first, the Swamp Thing films. They're great. I love them. Oh dear. Here, let's see. We've not much further to go. We're all over the place. We'll have a wee natter about such things. But let's. But thanks, guys. That's a good wee bit of crack there. Dear. Let's see. Where did we get to? Not brought your mind. You've digested so much time, you have delusions of immortality. Even your empire, my lord, must live its time and die. Pauses. Don't parade smoke-blackened altars before me. I've heard enough sad histories of gods and messiahs. Why should I need special powers to forecast ruins of my own like all those others? The lowliest servant of my kitchens could do this. He shook his head. The moon fell. That's the point we were just making. All empires go the same way. If you want to start one, you should probably be well aware of what's going to happen to it because there's plenty of evidence and there's plenty of stories. And I said I live in the remnants of the British Empire, and arguably because the British, what we call the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and its Commonwealth still holds dominions and controls overseas territories, therefore it's still an empire. As far as I'm concerned, and particularly if you look at the Falklands, or Britain fought a whole war over that, and you can clearly see that the Falklands are nothing to do with the British Isles. They're halfway around the world. They clearly belong to Argentina. But big war fought over that here, and pretty much mostly people think it was because of oil. But that's the last kind of big. That's the British are sending their fleet, if you see what I mean. And it was a kind of interesting war because they fought on both sides with kind of the same weapons, if you like. Similar technology. But that sad histories of gods and messiahs, yeah. And I said the one I love to point out, if anybody's not familiar with it, is The Man Who Would Be King. Is a great one. And there's a wonderful version of that in 2008 from Ace Trucking Co. Space Truckers was supposed to be based on Ace Trucking Co. Ace Trucking Co. is a kind of 2008's answer to the CB, the Smokey and the Bandit phenomenon and all of that kind of thing. They're space truckers and they have their own language, etc. But how Ace Garb goes out actually is that he pretends to be a god, and it's very much 2008 doing its version of The Man Who'd Be King, if you like, with Ace Garb, and he dies in the end. But he dies for his godhood, if you see what I mean. And it's a great story, and I was absolutely devastated when Ace Garb died. Some of my all-time favorite characters ever appearing in 2080 are in that story. But the crew of the Speedo Ghost, as it's called, or Ace Garb, who's kind of got his head is shaped like an ace, from like an ace of spades. His bodyguard has got one of the best names ever. His name is GBH brackets dead, and he's dead. He thinks he's dead. And there's the freak, etc. It's a very funny, and the art is it by Bellardini? I think is it some of these old, possibly Italian or South American artists that 2080 got working for them. But the story was called Ace Trucking Co. and it's exactly. In fact, I've got a wee sort of graphic novel. Its writers are John Wagner and Alan Grant. John Wagner is the creator of Judge Dredd, and artist Massimo Bellardinelli. There you go. Follow the misadventures of a space trucking company headed by Ace Garb. Ace Trucking Co. is on Wikipedia. If you want, it was great. Absolutely loved it. Uncollected. Yeah, looks like there's a couple of complete volumes possibly available. Works by Alan Grant. Yeah, there we go. But it's a very similar thing. Messiahs, gods, etc. Sad histories. And that must be, I'm well aware. I don't. Nobody needs special powers to tell you what's going to happen. You know, um, to my empire, the lowliest servant of the kitchen could do that. The moon fell. He said, "You've not brought your mind to rest at its beginning." The Gola said. "Is that how you destroy me?" Paul demanded. "Prevent me from collecting my thoughts?" And it says, and this is, I suppose, quite funny. If it seems that Paul's thoughts are quite chaotic in this sense, because of the visions, and his remark is here: "Can you collect chaos?" We Zen Sunni say, "Not collecting, that is the ultimate gathering." What can you gather without gathering yourself? Not collecting my thoughts. If you relate that to the thoughts, not collecting, that's the ultimate gathering. What can you gather without gathering yourself? So, sort yourself out first, that kind of thing. He says, "I'm dazzled by a vision and you spew nonsense. What do you know of prescience?" That's what we were just talking about. Here it says, "I've seen the oracle at work. I've seen those who seek signs and omens for their individual death." Paul whispered. He took a trembling breath. "It moves. It moves. And men always fear things which move by themselves." I've put that comment about AI. You fear your own powers. Things fall into your head from nowhere. And I thought that's a nowhere is also Erewhon. I wonder, is that probably reading too much into that? But I just thought nowhere is Erewhon. And a lot of ideas fell into Frank Herbert's head from Erewhon, didn't they? Sorry, things fall into your head from nowhere. When they fall out, where do they go? And Paul says, "You comfort me with thorns." He growls at him. And we're told that an inner illumination came over the Gola's face, and for a moment he became pure Duncan Idaho. And I just thought that was very funny. 100% pure Duncan Idaho. Here we go. "I give you what comfort I can." And in that moment, he's Duncan again, I think, trying to help his master. Interestingly, what Haight says about the oracle, "I've seen the oracle at work. I've seen those who seek signs and omens for their individual destiny. They fear what they seek." Yeah, omens and oracles, etc. There's loads of them recorded in history. We've talked about the few symbols and oracles that we know about within the ancient Greek world, but all sorts of things. And I suppose we'll encounter more, actually. Fish speakers are another example of an oracle. But yeah, for example, all of those Atreides, the stories of the House of Atreus, if anyone wants to look at the wee Pelopeds video. Someone, by the way, was asking me, am I going to do another video on the Pelopeds of Dune? We've done all of the Peloped stuff, so we are going to continue that. I think I need to give the playlist a new title, and we'll just call it "The Greek Myths and Their Influence on Dune." And we've done the Pelopeds, but I'm going to do the Theban line. Because it's not just the house, the Atreides that Paul's based on. So I'm going to try and do a few more episodes, probably one to focus on. Maybe we'll get them all into one or two episodes. I don't know, but we'll look at particularly the line of Oedipus and Laius is the next one that we need to do, because Paul and I think Ali are Oedipus in a sense in this book, and of course the Baron is based on Laius, is the father of Oedipus. For those, does anybody? I was going to say about how the Baron dies in the film. Just pathetic. I don't know. Oh dear. Excuse me, folks. I'll just take some fluids here. So Paul wondered at the momentary spasm. Had the Gola felt grief within his mind rejected? Had Haight put down a vision of his own? Had the Gola felt grief which his mind rejected? Why is his mind rejecting grief? Is it because it's to come down in the future and there's no point in grieving now? If you see what I mean. Had Haight put down a vision of his own? Does he see something? Paul says, my moon has a name. There we go. And of course, we, as we're pointing out, somebody did point out earlier, of course, we do know it's Chani, because if we get to the end of this chapter, it is referring to her. But all the different things that I think that he suggests sort of as he's trying to explore this vision, I think all of them can be represented by the fallen moon, the missing moon, the civilization that he's building, the Fremen themselves, they'll go bye-bye. Chani will go bye-bye, and he'll go bye-bye. So all of them, I think. But in this particular case, I think it is of course Chani. But I think we should consider the fallen moon in those other ways as well, you know. Otherwise, why not? If he is prescient and he has this vision, and again, the other thing about this, folks, is it's a vision. The moon's not going to disappear. It's not going to go, is it? You know, the moon is most definitely, it's a metaphorical vision. And we kind of wonder, why is it not a snapshot of the future? Or is it simply, and I think more likely that the vision is in relation to his own prescience, the vision has produced hallucinations. Sorry, the extra, the more and more melange is producing a level of hallucination. It's a drug after all. And possibly that's what this vision is. And it's a hallucination in relation to this path. Otherwise, why does he not just know it's why is he contemplating this? But then he says the moon has a name. So the whole time, as much as he's contemplating this, different aspects of this, you know, it is Chani. So why is he dodging the issue, etc., etc.? Why doesn't he just tell, hey, it's got a name? So the vision I've written here, and actually at this wee point, because I've scribbled this down, it's Chani, the Fremen, Arrakis, all of these things. So the vision, here we go. He let the vision flow over him then. Pardon me. Though his whole being shrieked, no sound escaped. I'll take some water here, folks, excuse me. He was afraid to speak, fearful. There we go, here's our reasoning. Fearful that his voice might betray him. The air of this terrifying future was thick with Chani's absence. There we go, solid, on the page. Flesh that had cried in ecstasy, eyes that had burned him with their desire, the voice that had charmed him because it played no tricks of subtle control. All gone, back into the water and the sand. And there we go. It's a lovely little bit of writing there. Flesh that had cried in ecstasy, eyes that had burned him with their desire, the voice that had charmed him because it played no tricks of subtle control. The voice, not the voice, but the voice. All gone, back into the water and the sand. And it terrifies him, and he's shrieking. The fear, terror, all these emotions are running through Paul in this chapter. He's deeply unsettled. And what do? You know, it's an interesting question. Slowly, Paul turned away and looked out at the present. So he's not been quite here, has he? He's drunk on too much time, focusing on the future that's ever coming closer towards him, I suppose. But here he looked out at the present on the plaza before Alia's temple. And we're told that 3 shaven-headed pilgrims entered from the processional avenue. They wore grimy yellow robes and hurried with their heads bent against the afternoon's wind. One walked with a limp, dragging his left foot. They beat their way against the wind, rounded a corner, and were gone from his sight. The grimy yellow robes and the one limping, we're wondering, is this part of the conspiracy within the, this is the Quizerati, isn't it? Oh no, sorry, it's not the Quizerati. They're pilgrims. I do apologize. 3 shaven-headed pilgrims. It was the yellow robes that made me think they were Quizerati. They're pilgrims. Sorry. I just think dragging the left foot. So he opens his eyes, sees these people, and is gone from now. But simply put, I suppose this is one of the things that the place and time now is here, and the place and time is now here and now. Just as his moon would go, they were gone. Still, his vision lay before him. Its terrible purpose gave him no choice. And there's that phrase, terrible purpose, again, is what Paul refers to it as. ultimately, that is, I think, Paul, the terrible purpose to me is the golden path, but he doesn't call it that. The flesh, and here's his thoughts here as we end this chapter. The flesh surrenders itself. Eternity takes back its own. Our bodies stirred these waters briefly, danced with a certain intoxication before the love of life and self, dealt with a few strange ideas, and then submitted to the instruments of time. It's a lovely bit of writing. I like it. It's very true, isn't it? What can we say of this? I occurred. I am not, yet I occurred. It's life and death summed up in a moment, in a nice little paragraph. The flesh surrenders itself. Eternity takes back its own. Our bodies stirred these waters briefly, danced with a certain intoxication before the love of life and self, dealt with a few strange ideas, then submitted to the instruments of time. What can we say of this? I occurred. I am not, yet I occurred. And we can all say that, can't we? And that sounds a bit like my life. And there we go. Fall of Moon, and the terrible purpose really is that Paul is alive and Chani is dead, and we've hit the end of that chapter. And our next one, of course, will be chapter 12, which will begin with the epigraph, "You do not beg the sun for mercy." And I actually thought, you can beg the sun for mercy if it's your sun god and you worship. You probably would, but it won't give you any, will it? But there we go, folks. A wonderful little... it's a good chapter just to get inside the head of Paul. And as we go, it seems that we always get this idea that he's trying to dodge these things. Prevent the jihad. Off we go, jihad. Well, it's more about bringing the jihad to an end sooner rather than later, I think now. Excuse me. But where is he in relation to this? As we move forward, I think the next few chapters, particularly when Chani discovers about the nature of Irulan, how he talks to her there, what Irulan's been up to, I think is really, really, Chani, as we constantly point out, to me is a very tragic character, and that I think in some senses that she's a victim of Paul and the whole thing, as much as anyone else is, I suppose it's a kind of question. What would you do? Maybe would you tell her? But the interesting thing about Paul is this, and this is what Herbert does so well, is, how do I put it? And I've said this before, no matter what, by the time we get to Children of Dune and we see the end of Paul Atreides, we all still love him, don't we? As a character, we don't hate him. We don't see him as the villain. And we have to, this is the whole point about Dune, we have to question why. And then we go to the God Emperor, and wow, what a monster. But we love him, don't we? I'm just going to ask, do we all love these characters? What are we not impressed by them? I think you'll agree. But the question is why, especially in the light of the body count and the little things that we're told and the minor details that we won't see. The 61 billion dead people. For what? To stabilize an empire and create commerce? I don't think so. And it's a question, and it really does. We start to it's really, this is the thing about Paul Atreides, and I think why he's such a great character. And he is a hero, no matter what, that's Frank's intent, he is a hero. Is that we do wonder about him, and we have to consider him probably more than almost any literary character I've ever read. There's such an ambiguity about him, and as I said, the whole desire of Frank Herbert is to set this hero up for us in this book to be admirable. He didn't design him to be. Paul is designed to be a character that we should admire. He's an amalgamation of many, many heroes, and that's one of the things that I think I would do as well. For the next, we're talking about the Greek mythology, because actually each character is based on a whole range of characters, not just one or two. So we might just go with all the major characters and minor characters in Dune and who they're modelled on, which could be interesting. That'll take us all over the ancient world and to many different cultures, Let me just catch up with your comments, folks. But I wonder how you feel about it. But it's we get insight into Paul, and it's always the big question for me. Is what do we feel about this hero on this hero's journey, and especially when we maybe don't know the intent of the author here. But this is the book where we should be shocked about what the hell is this guy. The next book will be different. I think they will not see too much of Paul, but Paul will return as the preacher in that, and then we're done. But then we get the God Emperor, and of course the God Emperor is an abomination as well as a Kwisatz Haderach, and he admits it as much. But he also has his father, Paul, inside him, and what we get from the God Emperor really is a commentary on Paul, I suppose, which is fascinating. But who's there to give us a commentary on the God Emperor? I think. Let me just catch up with your comments in the epitaph. The Gola feels joy at being alive and wonder at the root of his earlier self. What Paul sees as a spasm of grief may be a spasm of joy, even if painful. Yeah, it's a. I think what a joy it is to be alive. And I wonder if I'll ever leap inward to the root. It is to be alive, especially when you've been dead. There's a suggestion of being a little bit suicidal almost. If I go the way of my vision future, I'll be alive then, muttered. What makes you think I want to live then? And as Cynthia's saying there, we have our little epigraph here at the start. Epigraph number 11. What a joy it is to be alive. And of course, this is the Gola speaks. But also, whether any active mind can find it, that remains tangled in the future. But all things a man can do or mind, any active mind may do it. Who knows what will happen? I could do anything that a man can do, so who knows where my future lies? And it's something maybe, that we don't really know. You can make those are the best laid plans of mice and men. Off go array, as Bobby Burns would say. Off go array. I'm someone whose life has been like that. I never really kind of knew what to do with myself, but kind of figured out a plan, and eventually going along with life. And then everything that I had in life went absolutely tits up, as they say in this country. And my life became extremely chaotic. Not that it wasn't kind of chaotic before that. And something, regardless, I would never have thought I would be where I am today or doing all these things, but I'm here, and somehow I got here, and I ended up falling in love and getting married and all of these things. When my life went badly wrong for me, or how I saw it as going badly wrong for me, it wasn't really for me. It was just time to step up for responsibilities and stuff, if you like. But consequences are unusual, and I suppose an interesting when I was telling you about having prescience about both my parents dying. Nothing could have prepared me for what would have happened after they died. Nothing. I could not have foreseen the absolute madness of it and how much it would affect my life, But things work out, somehow. But I particularly like some of the writing in this. We had somebody commenting earlier. Let me just see if I can see who it was, but it was a nice comment. And it was just about Frank's writing. And it was just out there, and I loved it. I thought it was a really nice thing to say. If I can find it, let me see. It was a comment about Dune Messiah. Oh, I can't see it. Let me just have a look at Gurney's song. Might have been Coco 4080. I can't remember. Somebody was just saying that they loved Dune Messiah and the writing, etc. I'm just commenting on. As I said, we get lots of nice little bits of. There's some really nice writing in this chapter. I think particularly the last paragraph, the ending of this chapter, is really lovely, and because it's succinct, isn't it? It sums up life and death and your place in the universe in a paragraph, which on my page I've written here is in 7 lines. That's wonderful economy of language. And it just speaks of truth to me. The flesh surrenders itself, eternity takes back its own, and our bodies stirred these waters briefly. We engage in life briefly, we dance around with a certain intoxication before the love of life and self. Dealt with a few strange ideas and then submitted to the instruments of time. We have to deal with a lot of strangeness in our lives, don't we? You know, and of course, that's what we get out of that at the end of it. What's the Moonfall all about? It's Chani, and it really does. It's possibly the fact that we're reading Dune Messiah and working at it, and having a bit of fun and a bit of chat about it. That Chani's, particularly because I've been reading this at the moment, thinking about Chani a fair bit, that her character jarred so badly. I just, it wasn't Chani at all, And Carlos saying, wasn't this around the time his wife passed? It seems very personal how he describes Chani's loss. No, it's not, Carlos. No, Dune Messiah comes out in 1969, I think. Frank Herbert's wife dies in 19. Hang on, I'll tell you, she dies in the early 80s. She died. It's the dedication is in the 5th book to his wife. So we're still in the 60s with Dune Messiah. I think it's 69. Let me just have a look. 1969, yes. And I believe it's, let me see. There she is. Beverly Herbert, Bev, as she's known, is a major contributing force to the Dune series. What's that? The dedication to the wife is in Heretics of Dune, which is 1984. Let me just have a look. Oh. Right, where are Dune books? Heretics. Chapter House. I got a hardback of Heretics. I do. There we go. Things you buy. Oh, there we go. It's quite a nice cover on this one. I think I scanned it once. That's my copy there. Oddly enough, find out how much did I pay for that? Look at that, £1.25. Isn't that lovely? Dear, oh dear. Let me just see. Or maybe it's the. Hang on. Maybe I'm wrong. Hang on. Maybe it's the next one. I brought both. It's not in there, but that's a hardback. It might have come out before. Let me just see. 6th. Here's another book dedicated to Bev. It's the 6th. I do apologize. Chapter House Dune is the dedication to Beverly. Here's another book dedicated to Bev, friend, wife, dependable helper, and the person who gave this one its title. Dedication is posthumous. There we go. And the words below, well, written the morning after she died, should tell you something of her inspiration. There we go. The formal obituary read, Beverly Ann Stewart Forbes Herbert, born October 20th, 1926. She died at 5:05 p.m., February the 7th, 1984, at Kawala, Maui. Yeah, it's a lovely little thing, actually, reading his, it goes on for a few pages. I think we'll keep it maybe for another time. But no, Carlos, his wife, so that's 1984, books in 1969. And Frank remarries pretty quick just after that, and then he passes away himself in 1986. And Lord Cronk saying, "Yeah, I feel most for the Chani character." It starts to really hit, doesn't it? And as I said, as we move a little further into the book, all you can have is sympathy for Chani. And how she acts and behaves, what he wants her to do, and again, it's to do with his vision. I want to kill Irulan. You mustn't. Oh, why? Have you seen it? And it's all to do with what he hasn't seen, etc. This kind of thing. But ultimately, yeah, she's a tragic character. She's going to die, and again, what do we ask ourselves? Is it the question like that he asks? Are you creating this future? And is the best possible future that you can come up with the one where your life partner dies, very soon? how much of it's preventable. Why not try a different path, if you see what I mean? And I often get the sense that the paths that Paul can see, it's a bit like, do you create one path, or if you ask a question, get an answer, does that create new questions? This kind of thing, it's foreknowledge, but it's not all knowledge. And this chapter really gives a sense of it, but it's still a bit confusing. And as we go through it, I think we just really have to keep a close eye on Paul in this book just to see what's really going on with him. But the real question to ask is, how much does he know? And we'll know that pretty soon, pretty much, to be honest. But he does know. There's a flaw in the future that he's looking at, which I think is interesting, because ultimately this path that Paul's on, it doesn't produce the same results as he thinks. If you see what I mean. But in terms of Chani, who loves him, is his great love, all of this, it's a pretty, he can't even be honest with her. You know what I mean? Which is probably good that he didn't marry her. I don't know. I think it's, honesty is at the heart of most relationships, isn't it? If marriage is at the very least, as long as you can communicate and be honest with each other, your marriage will do okay. I think, myself and my wife are like that. We're honest and we talk, and we're very happily married. And anytime we have a problem, we sort it out. But we speak to each other, and we work very well together. In fact, we've actually talked about it. Myself and my wife have kind of worked together 3 times on big things, if you like, some life and death matters and stuff like that. And when we do work together, I think we're kind of almost just, you cannot deal with us. My wife kind of, I don't know, she's almost like a female version of me, but she has her sensibilities match mine in many ways, but where I have gaps, she does not. Together, we're almost quite a really good package, and especially if we're working together, which I actually really like doing, But yeah, Carlos was saying I was way off. Must be because I read the bulk of the stories in the early to mid 80s. Yeah, time's moved on. It's okay. It's just one of those things. But no, you're remembering the dedication. It's okay. Dates are sometimes hard to remember, And it's interesting in terms of, we're talking about Frank's writing. You've got Dune turning up in 63, magazine format. The book comes out in 65. After that, we'll see what I think is his weakest book. Prior to Dune is the Dragon in the Sea. Is my favorite Frank Herbert book outside of the Dune series. And for anybody who's into submarine, fiction, things like Hunt for It. Not too many good books about submarines and submariners that are in science fiction. There's a few. Neville Shoots on the Beach, etc. But Frank Herbert's Under Pressure is an incredibly tight, taut political thriller. No chapters, no breaks, tension. Hence the title, Under Pressure. It's got 3 different titles for some reason. It's a way to confuse your readership, isn't it? But it's a cracking book. But after Dune, it's not Dune Messiah. It's The Green Brain. Which I have quite a bit of bother saying sometimes. It's again another one that was written for magazines. It's very pulpy. That's my copy there. We've got 40 cents from. There we go. I'm into 1 odds on the Earth's Alternative Masters. It's not a good book. But yeah, I didn't enjoy it at all. It's not massive. A vividly different science fiction novel by the author. It's still got Frank's sensibilities, but it was more to do with the subject matter, I thought. But the interesting thing I thought is that you tend to get male and female characters in the first 3 books of Frank Herbert all look the same. If you see what I mean, redheads, Irish types, for want of a better term. What you would call the Irish Colleen, if you like, is usually red-haired and green-eyed, this kind of thing. But it's not a great book. When did that come out? And I'm sure he's been working away. And again, we have so the Green Brain here I have is turns up in Amazing Stories as a novelette titled Green Slaves and is copyright 1965 by Ziff Davis Publications Inc. That's Amazing Stories, but this one's copyright 1966. That's the book. So that's the way Frank worked. A lot do stuff for a magazine, and then turn it into a book. And a lot of the writers did that. I suppose that's kind of where they were starting to kick off. The ones that became the big four were the ones who sold a lot more books, if you like, than they did. And they're called the Big Four because they were household names in America, according to Brian Aldiss. But 66, so 3 more years. But again, we have to remember that bits of Dune Messiah, bits of Children of Dune are completed before Dune is finished, which means if we understand that, Carlos, bits of Dune Messiah and Children of Dune therefore are written before 1963, if that makes sense. You liked it. I didn't mind it, but it really just, I don't know. I actually really like the little book though. I love that. See the cover now? That's quite a wee dinky kind of thing, but it's ages since I read it. I actually worked at the book. You can see I've sat and highlighted it and stuff because I'm looking for stuff. Initially, when I was just kind of going to do, and it was let's look at the works of Frank Herbert, but it was just too much. And you've got to kind of narrow your focus. I'll maybe give it another chance, actually, Carlos. I don't remember much about it. It's an insect thing, isn't it? International Ecological Organization systematic exterminating the voracious insects which made those areas uninhabitable. Using deadly fomal bombs and newly developed vibration weapons, men like Yao Martino and his co-workers fought to clear the green hell of the Mato Grosso. But somehow these areas which had been completely cleared were becoming reinfested despite the impenetrable vibration barriers. And tales came out of the jungles of insects mutated to incredible sizes, of creatures who seemed to be men but whose eyes gleamed with the chitinous sheen of insects. There we go. That's the blurb on the back. Here's a vividly different science fiction novel by the author of Dune. Yeah, that kind of stuff I always thought was a bit of and again, I suppose, Frank, back then, all that kind of radioactive stuff, Attack of the Giant Ants, this kind of thing, it kind of reminded me of that. And as much as, a lot of those American B movies and stuff that feature material like that, I think that's kind of what put me off of it. But then I would have been reading it, Carlos, again, in the 2000s. So to me, it was just a bit, some things date a bit better than others, But then came Dune Messiah, you see. I wonder what here we go, Children of Dune. Because I've actually read forward in Dune Messiah twice now. I figured I might just go bite the bullets, just jump on ahead and read. Let's just see. Children of Dune then is 1976. So again, and there'll be other books, but so 1963, 1969, and 1976. 6 to 7 years between each novel there of the original Dune trilogy. Goodness, got a big sticker here. I've got this. Somebody put it in a book bank. Second-hand copy. Perfect. I'm not a big fan of buying new copies of Frank Herbert's Dune series because I've wrecked so many of them. Sorry. I'll sit and do that. I should do that another time. But I'm kind of looking forward to this. But I think, as we all said, hopefully it'll take us a while to push through this. We're at the halfway point pretty much with Dune Messiah, I think. And then I'm looking forward to hitting Children of Dune with the Encounter Leto, the Preacher, etc. But the one that I'll be looking forward to really is getting to the God Emperor. And as I was saying, interestingly enough, Carlos, when we do get there to the God Emperor, I think prior to us hitting it in the book club, providing I'm still alive and all that, is I might try to do a study quickly on my own of the White Plague, because the books come out at a very similar time, and that's Frank's Irish book, if you like, and it's kind of I've often said that there's a lot of the. I think we hopefully you maybe have got some of it. That there's a lot of the aspects of Northern Ireland and Ireland, etc. In Dune, and that you'd probably have to be from here to notice them, but or to have an Irish background, if you like Frank. Um, but the first time I read God Emperor of Dune, I just went, particularly the Fremen. I just thought it was about here, and of course we all see our own. I think there's a lot of us can see our cultures and religions in Dune. But I definitely saw mine, and I see it all the time. Injun, the red hand, the hands, the fish. All of these are quite important symbols in Irish heraldry and mythology and legend. As I said, I can walk just a few, not too far to see a flag with a red hand on it, within a mile, easy, no problem. And actually, within about a couple of miles, there's a salmon leap. The salmon leap, by the way, is a deadly attack. As it the Irish ancient warriors would have like a long hilted barbed spear. That's called the gay bulla. Let me see if I can draw it for you. If anybody's ever read, some of you are into your comics there. If anybody's ever read Sloan, Pat Mills's Sloan, you'll see a lot of this stuff in it. He's an amalgamation of a bunch of the Irish heroes, if you like. It looks a bit like that. There we are. This and the salmon leap. It's a. If anybody's ever read the Toyn or anything like that, Cuchulainn would you leap through the air with one of these spears in your toes and fling it into your enemy. And the spear of the sun in Irish mythology is meant to be one of these weapons because you can't. If you look at it, it's a barbed directional weapon. You can't pull that weapon out without ripping someone's guts out. So that's the salmon leap is actually a martial. How would you put it? A move, if you like, and it's taught to Cuchulainn by a warrior woman. I'm trying to remember her name. I'll look it up quickly, actually. But that's what the salmon leap. So the salmon, there's the salmon of wisdom in this country as well. So that's it. Scatha is her name, or Scatha, if you want. Scathach would be how you would write it in English. And of course, Cuchulainn's original name is Setanta. Cuchulainn means hound of Culann because he takes that name because he kills Cullen's dog. So yeah, hands, the fish, all these kind of things. The fish would be a salmon here. As I said, they're quite important symbols in other cultures as well. And I kind of, hands, we talk about agency and all of these things, what they represent. I often talk about within heraldry. Fists, it depends, is the hand right? Is it left? Is it fist? Is it open? These kind of things, they all have different meaning, But if you look into other cultures and religions, hands as a symbol are incredibly important. For that reason, But there we go. Has anybody got any comments about the film, folks? If or who's not going to see it? Did I think I see? Telios, Babs, you've not seen, not particularly enthusiastic. Oh, I kind of thought it's my business. I have to go, but yeah. I said, well, wife's heading out for dinner tomorrow night with a friend, so I'll maybe pop on tomorrow night, folks. Just for a little open Dune chat, if you like. I know not everyone's seen the film. It still comes out in different places at different times. I myself was a bit behind everybody in America seeing it and so on, But yeah, I think we'll pop on and have a wee bit of a chat if anybody would like to. I've scribbled all my notes actually about the film that I'd thought of on the hop, Put a wee date and an initial on it, but just at the end of my chapter there, as those, But there we go. That's another chapter done. We're still moving forward, folks. And as always, it's food for thought. This chapter, isn't it? And we'll get more of this as we go forward. But really, what does he know? It will be revealed to us, But But yeah, it's as I think as we were saying there, the more and more we move into this book, the more and more we will. Lord Cronksy feel most for the Chani character. She's at the end of this book. How could you not? I think the real tragedy is Chani at the end of this book. Um, and as I said, to look at all of these, here's this universal super being, this weapon created by if we want to think of Paul Atreides as that way, but we can think of them all as tools, is the word that Frank uses, isn't it? The Bene Gesserit wanted to point this, but if he is a weapon, is he guiding himself, if you like? If you see what I mean, is he a self-guided a weapon that creates all of these futures? Who knows? But that's what the Kwisatz Haderach was. It's meant to be a weapon in a funny way, though it has other purposes, But he and again, what was the thing we said that Paul will destroy himself with? Power and money, that kind of thing. And we've seen what he's built. In his 12 years, bigger buildings than anyone else. It's quite gaudy, isn't it? It's a overt display of power. All these kind of buildings and different styles of architecture, and we have objects from old Mother Earth, I suppose, old Earth, which must be quite valuable. You kind of often wonder, why doesn't he sort of grab that object and go, I wonder where Earth is, It's interesting. Earth's a funny question. I hope that Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson haven't answered it, But there we go, folks. It's just hit about midnight my time. Unless anybody's got any other wee questions or comments, we've been running for about 3 hours. So. But for those of you who are feeling a wee bit robbed, by Denis Villeneuve's vision, don't worry about it. It's just a movie. There are 2 really good versions of Dune out there. They're not perfect, but we've got David Lynch's version. There's 3 versions of that. There's the Alan Smithy, there's the David Lynch, and then there's the Spice Diver edit. If anybody's not seen it, go and watch it, because it's a re-edit of the Lynch movie to match the structure of the books. It's great. It's brilliant. Love it. And I still love, Dune as well. But the miniseries, to me, hit all the right marks. It might not make people happy in terms of casting and the special effects and stuff, but in terms of being faithful, really faithful to Frank Herbert's vision and his work, I think that's the one. And I don't think David Lynch in any way disrespected Frank's work. Sometimes there's a photograph, I don't know if you've seen it, and it's Frank Herbert from the filming of Dune, and it's Kyle MacLachlan on his shoulders, and it's like Frank's playing with Kyle as if it's his son. If it's as if Kyle, this is Paul, as if Paul Atreides was his son. It's a lovely photo, and I often thought you often wondered what Brian Herbert thought of that photo. I don't know, but the David Lynch film is excellent. The miniseries Dune, it's Frank Herbert's Dune, isn't it? Nobody put their name on that, and then Children of Dune is pretty good. The problems are obvious, but it's what could they do? Goodness gracious, look at that! Sorry, folks. Look, I told you. You see how much I work on these books. I picked this book up on years, but it's just fallen apart in my hands. Chapter House Dune. That's why I have many copies. Goodness gracious, it's just. That's the one thing I'm going to say. In terms of publications, I work on all sorts of books over the years. The only books that consistently fall apart on me while working on them are these. Are the Dune books. I've wrecked I don't know how many of them. And I'm not being abusive to them. I'm writing on them and reading them, But it looks like that book just fell. Chapter House just fell apart in my hands. It's a good job I've got a few more copies, isn't it? I don't know how many copies of Children of Dune I've got here. 4 or 5 at least. I got the new one. Let me see. Got 1, 2, 3 with the same cover. Would you believe? It must be my 5 copies of this. But I actually grabbed this one because the writing was a wee bit small and it was in a second-hand basket. Oh, I was so sad. I hate. Oh, I love books. It's not too bad. We'll get the sellotape out. What does it open? It opens it. The writing of history is largely a process of diversion. Most historical accounts distract attention from the secret influences behind great events. Machon Tag. Sorry, folks. I didn't mean to jump forward 4 books there. Well, listen, guys. Everybody, thank you very much as always for your comments and your questions. Really appreciate it. For those who enjoyed the movie, I'm glad that you enjoyed it. For those who don't want to see it or hate it, I totally, I feel I've got it. I understand. You know, and it's not worth worrying about, is it? It's not worth getting upset about. It's the Hollywood machine trying to tell you that what Frank Herbert's work is like and trying to push a bit of a message, and it's the bare bones. It really is. And I don't know what it is really, to be honest, but that's pretty. Cynthia saying thanks, and Carlos saying gotta go. See you soon, Doc. No problem, Carlos. I'm going to do the same myself. Thanks very much, everyone. I'm always a bit long-winded about saying goodbye, so we'll get on with the next chapter. Hopefully, same time next week. Health being okay. It's a spectacle. For those who I respect your integrity, and you know what, these books are great. If you're absolutely disgusted with the Dune film, go read that again, as I'm sure many of you will love to. It's a hell of a rereadable book, isn't it? Not every book you can reread again. Well, there you go, folks. I will say good night. All the very best to you all from Northern Ireland. And look after yourselves. Take care of yourselves no matter where you are. Be safe. And I'll say good night. Bye-bye.